Elena thought she was free. 5 years of running, hiding, rebuilding, gone the moment Victor Russo walked through those hospital doors. The most dangerous man she'd ever known. The husband she'd escaped. The father who didn't know his son existed. One glance at the feverish boy in her arms, and Victor's world would shatter. One word from him, and hers would end. Because men like Victor Russo don't forgive betrayal. They don't forget stolen years. And they never, ever let go. If you want to see how this story ends, stay until the final word. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. The rain came down in sheets, turning the city streets into black mirrors that reflected nothing but chaos. Elena Vance ran through it with her son pressed against her chest, his small body burning with fever, his breathing shallow and wrong. She'd wrapped him in every blanket she owned, but the heat radiating from his skin made the fabric feel useless, desperate. "Mama," Noah whispered, his voice barely audible over the storm. "I don't feel good." "I know, baby, I know. We're almost there." The hospital rose ahead like a fortress of light against the darkness, its emergency entrance glowing bright and cold. Elena's sneakers hit the pavement in uneven rhythms, her legs shaking from exhaustion and terror. She'd been awake for 36 hours. She'd burned through her last paycheck on rent 3 days ago. She had $17 in her wallet and a son whose fever had spiked to 104 degrees an hour ago. She burst through the automatic doors into controlled chaos. The ER was packed, every chair filled. People slumped against walls, cradling injuries, bleeding into towels, waiting with the kind of numb patience that came from knowing the system moved slow. The fluorescent lights were too bright, the air thick with antiseptic and sweat and fear. Elena pushed toward the registration desk, Noah's weight growing heavier in her arms. "Please," she said to the woman behind the counter, her voice cracking. "My son, he's burning up. He can't breathe right. He needs help." The woman barely looked up from her computer screen. "Name and insurance information." "Elena Vance, I don't have insurance right now, but fill out these forms." A clipboard slid across the counter. "Take a seat. We'll call you when a bed opens up." "You don't understand. He's only 4. His fever..." "Ma'am, everyone here needs help. Fill out the forms and wait your turn." Elena wanted to scream, wanted to grab the woman by her sterile scrubs and shake her until she understood that this wasn't just another number, another file, another problem to process. This was Noah. This was everything. But she'd learned years ago that screaming didn't change anything. She took the clipboard with trembling hands and turned toward the waiting area. There were no empty seats. She slid down the wall in a corner, cradling Noah against her chest, trying to keep him warm despite the heat pouring off his small frame. She filled out the forms with a pen that kept skipping, her handwriting barely legible. Mother's name, Elena Marie Vance. Child's name, Noah Alexander Vance. Father's name, unknown. Her pen hovered over that last line. The lie had become so automatic she barely felt it anymore. 5 years of practice. 5 years of safety built on a foundation of careful omissions and half-truths. Father's name, unknown. She finished the forms and handed them back to the desk. Then she returned to her corner and held her son and waited. An hour passed. Then 2. Noah's fever climbed higher. His skin took on a frightening pallor beneath the flush. Elena pressed her lips to his forehead, whispering reassurances she didn't believe, promises she couldn't keep. Around them, other patients were called back in irregular intervals. An elderly man clutching his chest, a teenager with a gash across his forearm, a woman who'd been sobbing quietly into her phone. But not Noah. Elena was about to march back to the desk and demand answers when the doors opened. The change was immediate and absolute. It wasn't loud. There were no sirens, no announcements. But every head in that waiting room turned toward the entrance like plants following the sun, or prey sensing a predator. 4 men entered first. They wore expensive suits that fit too perfectly to conceal anything except their intentions. They moved with military precision, scanning the room with eyes that cataloged threats and dismissed weaknesses in the same cold sweep. 2 positioned themselves by the doors. 2 moved deeper into the space, creating a corridor. Then he walked in. Elena's entire body went rigid. She knew him before her mind caught up to what her instincts were screaming. knew him in the way prey knows the shape of the hunter, in the way victims know the cadence of approaching footsteps in the dark. Victor Russo. 5 years hadn't softened him. If anything, time had sharpened every edge. He was taller than she remembered. Or maybe she'd forgotten what it felt like to stand in his shadow. His suit was charcoal gray, immaculate, expensive enough to fund her life for 6 months. His dark hair was swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, if marble could hold that much controlled violence. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Cold, calculating, absolutely certain of his power over every person in this room. He didn't look at anyone directly. He didn't have to. His presence bent the space around him, made everyone smaller, quieter, less significant. The hospital staff moved like someone had yanked invisible strings. The registration woman who'd dismissed Elena stood immediately. A doctor appeared from nowhere, already nodding before Victor said a word. "Mr. Russo." The doctor's voice carried across the sudden silence. "We have the private suite ready. Please, this way." Victor's voice was exactly as Elena remembered. Low, controlled, edged with an authority that made questions impossible. "The specialist?" "Already waiting upstairs, sir." "Good." He moved toward the elevators with the smooth, unhurried gait of someone who knew the world would wait. His men flanked him, their eyes never stopping their surveillance of the room. Elena pressed herself harder against the wall, making herself smaller, invisible. Noah stirred in her arms, mumbling something incoherent. She put her hand over his mouth gently, instinctively, and hated herself for it. "Don't look up. Don't move. Don't breathe." The elevator doors opened. Victor stepped inside. The doors began to close. Elena's heart started beating again. Then Noah coughed. A wet, rattling sound that cut through the waiting room like a gunshot. Every survival instinct Elena possessed screamed at her to run. But mothers don't run when their children can't breathe. She sat up straighter, rubbing Noah's back, whispering, "It's okay, baby. You're okay." The elevator doors stopped, reversed, opened again. Victor stood in the gap, his hand holding the door, his attention finally, devastatingly, directed toward the corner where Elena sat. She kept her head down, kept her focus on Noah. Maybe he wouldn't recognize her. 5 years was a long time. She'd cut her hair, dyed it darker. She'd lost weight from stress and poverty. She looked nothing like the girl he'd married. "You." Victor's voice wasn't raised, but it carried absolute command. "The woman with the child. Stand up." Elena's hands started shaking. She tightened her grip on Noah and slowly, carefully raised her head. Their eyes met. The recognition wasn't immediate. For 3 perfect seconds, Elena saw him look at her like she was a stranger, just another desperate woman in a county hospital. Nobody. Then his expression changed. It wasn't dramatic. Victor Russo didn't do dramatic. But Elena had learned to read him the way sailors learn to read approaching storms. She saw the subtle shift in his jaw, the microscopic narrowing of his eyes, the way his entire body went absolutely still in a manner that meant violence was being calculated and controlled. Elena. Her name in his mouth was a death sentence and a resurrection. She couldn't move, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. One of his men started toward her. Victor raised a hand without looking away from her face, and the man stopped immediately. "Leave us," Victor said quietly. "Sir, everyone, out." The doctor looked confused. "Mr. Russo, we should really—" Victor's gaze shifted to him for half a second. That was all it took. The doctor went pale and backed away. Within 60 seconds, the ER had cleared of everyone except patients who couldn't move and staff who pressed themselves against far walls like they could disappear into the paint. Victor stepped out of the elevator. Each footstep was deliberate, measured. He crossed the waiting room with the focused intensity of a predator that had just spotted prey after a long, hungry season. Elena tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. She clutched Noah tighter, feeling his fever burning through both their clothes. Victor stopped 3 feet away, close enough to touch, close enough to kill. 5 years, he said softly. 5 years, Elena. And this is where you've been hiding? In plain sight? She found her voice, though it came out hoarse and broken. Victor, please. Please what? Please don't cause a scene? Please pretend I didn't just find the wife who disappeared in the middle of the night? His control was terrifying. No raised voice, no visible anger, just cold, absolute focus. Please don't ask questions about the child in your arms? Noah stirred, opening fever-bright eyes. Mama? Victor's attention shifted to the boy. Elena watched something flicker across his face. Too fast to name, too dangerous to trust. How old is he? Victor asked. Victor, don't... How old? 4. The lie came automatically. He just turned 4. Victor's jaw tightened. He was doing math. The same math Elena had done 1,000 times, always praying he'd never get the chance to do it himself. His eyes moved over Noah's face, taking in the dark hair, the shape of his nose, the stubborn set of his small jaw, even through the haze of fever. What's his full name? Noah? Noah Vance. Noah. Victor repeated it like he was testing the weight of something dangerous. And his father? Elena's silence was answer enough. I asked you a question, Elena. You're not... She stopped herself, started again. It's complicated. Then uncomplicate it. Noah coughed again, his small body convulsing in her arms. Blood flecked his lips, just a little, but enough. Elena's maternal terror overrode everything else, even her fear of the man standing in front of her. He needs a doctor, she said desperately. Victor, please. Whatever you want to do to me, whatever you need to say, fine. But he needs help, now. Victor stared at her for one more eternal second. Then he turned to the nearest staff member. Get Dr. Morrison. Tell him to bring pediatric respiratory specialists. I want a full workup in the private suite immediately. The staff member ran. Victor looked back at Elena. Can you walk? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Then follow me. He didn't wait for agreement. He simply turned and walked toward the elevators, his remaining men falling into formation around him. Elena understood the unspoken command. Follow or watch your son deteriorate in a waiting room that would take another 3 hours to see him. She stood on shaking legs and followed. The elevator ride was silent except for Noah's labored breathing. Victor stood on the opposite side of the small space, his gaze fixed on the numbers climbing above the door. But Elena felt his awareness like a physical pressure. He knew exactly where she was, how she was standing, how fast her heart was beating. They exited on the 7th floor into a completely different world. This wing was quiet, carpeted, designed for privacy and money. Victor led them to a suite that looked more like a luxury hotel room than a hospital. There was a large bed with actual linens, not paper sheets, a sitting area, windows overlooking the rain-soaked city. A doctor was already there, along with 2 nurses and equipment Elena didn't recognize. Put him on the bed, the doctor said calmly, professionally. Elena hesitated. Victor moved to stand directly behind her. She felt the heat of him, close enough to touch, but carefully, not touching. They'll help him, Victor said quietly. That's what you want, isn't it? She carried Noah to the bed and laid him down gently. He whimpered, reaching for her. Mama, don't go. I'm right here, baby. These people are going to help you feel better. The medical team moved in with efficient calm. They took vitals, started an IV, listened to Noah's lungs with focused frowns. Elena stood beside the bed, holding her son's small hand, watching numbers climb and fall on monitors she didn't understand. Victor watched from near the window, silent, still, calculating. The doctor finished his initial examination and approached Victor, not Elena. Severe respiratory infection, possibly pneumonia. We'll need chest x-rays and blood work to confirm. The fever is dangerously high. We're starting antibiotics and fever reducers now. He's dehydrated, so we'll push fluids. He'll need to stay for observation, at minimum 48 hours. Victor nodded once. Whatever he needs. Cost is irrelevant. Understood, sir. The doctor returned to Noah's bedside. Victor remained by the window, his silhouette dark against the rain-streaked glass. An hour passed. The antibiotics started working. Noah's breathing eased slightly. His fever began to drop by fractional degrees. Elena sat in the chair beside his bed, stroking his hair, watching his small chest rise and fall with less struggle. She'd almost convinced herself that Victor might just leave, that he'd ensured Noah got care and would disappear back into whatever empire he'd built in her absence. Then his phone rang. He answered it without looking away from the window. What? A pause. Elena couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Victor's posture change, saw his free hand curl into a fist. How many? Another pause. No, I want them alive. I'm going to ask them personally who gave the order. His voice dropped lower, colder. And Marco? Make it clear what happens to people who move against me while I'm occupied. Very clear. He ended the call. Made another one immediately. Security to the 7th floor. Yes, the private wing. I want the entire floor locked down. Nobody in or out without my direct authorization. He glanced at Elena. And double the perimeter on the building. We have a situation. Elena's blood went cold. Victor, what? The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing everything in eerie red. Somewhere in the hospital, alarms began to sound, muted but insistent. Victor moved before Elena could process what was happening. He was beside Noah's bed in 3 strides, his body positioned between the door and the child. One of his men appeared in the doorway, gun already drawn. Report, Victor snapped. Power's out in sections 3 and 5. Generators running, but something cut the main lines. Could be system failure. It's not. Victor's certainty was absolute. How long until backup security arrives? 4 minutes? That's 3 minutes too long. The first gunshot was distant but unmistakable. Elena lunged for Noah, whose eyes had flown open in terror. It's okay, baby. It's okay. Get them to the bathroom, Victor ordered. Reinforced walls, no windows. Lock the door and don't open it for anyone except me. Victor, do it, now. Elena scooped Noah up, IV line and all, and ran for the bathroom. One of Victor's men followed, positioning himself outside the door. Elena slammed it shut and locked it, then sank to the floor with Noah in her arms. More gunshots, closer this time, shouting in a language Elena didn't recognize. The heavy thud of bodies hitting the floor, running footsteps in multiple directions. Noah buried his face against her shoulder. Mama, I'm scared. I know, baby, I know. Just hold on to me. Don't let go. Elena pressed her back against the tile wall and held her son and listened to the sound of violence erupting in the hallway. This was why she'd run. This was why she'd disappeared in the middle of the night 5 years ago, taking nothing but the clothes on her back and the secret growing inside her. This was why she'd built a new life in shadows and silence. Because Victor Russo's world was made of gunfire and blood and threats that materialized without warning. Because men like him didn't have families, they had liabilities. Because she'd always known, that loving him meant dying young or living like prey. The bathroom door shook. Elena screamed, "It's me!" Victor's voice controlled despite the chaos. "Open the door." She scrambled to her feet and unlocked it with shaking hands. Victor stood in the doorway, perfectly calm, except for the blood on his right hand. Not his blood. Elena could tell by the way he carried himself. Behind him, the suite looked like a war zone. 2 bodies on the floor, both in tactical gear. His men were securing the space, checking corners, speaking in rapid, clipped sentences. "We're moving," Victor said. "Now." "Where?" "Somewhere they can't reach us." "Can he walk?" Elena looked down at Noah, who was crying silently into her shoulder. "I'll carry him." "No, I will." Before she could protest, Victor reached out and lifted Noah from her arms with surprising gentleness. The boy was too sick and scared to resist. He clung to Victor's shirt with small fists, and Elena's heart cracked watching her son hold on to the father who didn't know the truth yet. "Stay close to me," Victor told her. "Don't stop moving. Don't look at anything. Just follow." They moved through the hospital like a military extraction. Victor's men formed a protective circle around them, weapons visible now, no pretense of civility. They took service elevators, back stairwells, corridors Elena didn't know existed. The hospital staff pressed themselves against walls and watched with wide, terrified eyes. They emerged into the underground parking garage. Rain hammered the concrete ramps. 3 black SUVs were waiting, engines running, doors open. Victor placed Noah in the middle vehicle, then reached back for Elena. She climbed in, and he followed, sandwiching her between himself and Noah. The door slammed shut. The convoy moved before she could ask where they were going. "Victor?" she tried again. "What's happening? Who were those people?" He didn't look at her. His attention was on Noah, who'd fallen into an exhausted, feverish sleep against the leather seat. Enemies. People who thought tonight was a good opportunity to make a move while I was distracted. Distracted by what? Finally, he turned to face her. The passing streetlights threw shadows across his face, making him look like something carved from darkness itself. By you, he said simply. By walking into that hospital and seeing a ghost. By realizing that the wife I spent 2 years searching for was sitting in a corner holding a child she said was 4 years old. Elena's throat closed. But he's not 4, is he, Elena? She couldn't answer, couldn't lie, couldn't tell the truth. Victor looked back at Noah, reached out and brushed the dark hair from the boy's fevered forehead with unexpected gentleness. 5 years ago, you told me you lost the baby. You said the pregnancy didn't survive the stress. You cried in my arms while I promised it would be okay, that we'd try again, that we had time. His voice remained even, controlled, but Elena heard the razor blade underneath. And then you disappeared. In the middle of the night, without a word, without a trace, but I had to, don't. The single word cut through everything. Don't explain yet, don't defend, don't justify, because if you tell me what I think you're going to tell me, if you confirm what I can already see in his face, in the timeline, in the fear in your eyes, I need to be somewhere I won't destroy things when I hear it. The SUV pulled through iron gates that opened automatically. Elena looked out the window and saw walls, guards, security that made the hospital look like a convenience store. They'd arrived at Victor's estate, the same estate she'd fled from 5 years ago, swearing she'd never return. The vehicle stopped. Doors opened. Victor climbed out and lifted Noah again, cradling the sleeping boy against his chest like he weighed nothing. There's a medical suite prepared, he said to someone Elena couldn't see. Dr. Morrison is already here. Get him set up in the East Wing. I want round-the-clock care until the fever breaks. Yes, sir. Victor started walking toward the massive house. Elena followed because she had no choice. Through marble halls she remembered, past artwork that probably cost more than every place she'd lived in combined, into a wing that had been renovated since her time here, converted into something that looked like a private hospital. A full medical team was waiting. They took Noah gently, transferring him to a bed that looked more comfortable than any Elena had been able to provide in 5 years. Monitors, IV poles, equipment that hummed with quiet efficiency. Elena moved to follow, but Victor's hand closed around her wrist. They'll take care of him, he said quietly, better than that county hospital ever could. I want to stay with him, and you will. But first, you and I are going to have a conversation, one we should have had 5 years ago. He released her wrist, but the command was clear. Elena watched the medical team settle Noah, watched her son's chest rise and fall steadily under their care, and knew she was out of moves. She'd run out of time. Victor led her to an office 3 doors down, the same office where he'd proposed to her 7 years ago, where he'd promised her protection, safety, a life free from the poverty and fear she'd known before him. He'd kept some of those promises, just not the ones that mattered. He closed the door and moved to the windows overlooking the grounds. Rain continued to hammer the earth. Lightning flickered in the distance. Sit, he said without turning around. Elena remained standing. I'm not one of your soldiers, Victor. No, you're my wife, which makes this worse. He turned to face her. Noah. That's what you named him. After who? No one. I just liked the name. And his middle name, Alexander? Elena's silence confirmed what he already knew. My father's name, Victor said softly. You gave our son my father's name, and then you made sure I'd never know he existed. He's not your son. The lie was reflexive, desperate. Elena regretted it the moment it left her mouth. Victor crossed the space between them in 2 strides. He didn't touch her, but he didn't have to. His presence was suffocating. Say that again, he said quietly. Look me in the eyes and tell me that boy sleeping 3 doors down isn't mine. Elena's courage crumbled. Tears started falling before she could stop them. I can't. Can't lie or can't tell the truth. Both. Neither. Victor, you don't understand. Then make me understand. Make me understand why you faked a miscarriage. Why you disappeared in the middle of the night. Why you've let me think for 5 years that I lost both my wife and my child. His control was slipping. She could hear it in the fractures appearing in his voice. Make me understand why my son is 4 years old, and I'm just finding out he exists. Because of this! Elena gestured wildly at the walls, the guards, the evidence of violence that had followed them here. Because people tried to kill us tonight. Because your world is guns and blood and enemies who don't care who they hurt to get to you. So you decided I didn't deserve to know? I decided he deserved to grow up, to have a chance at a normal life instead of being a target before he could even speak. Victor stared at her. A normal life. Is that what you gave him, Elena? Living in poverty, waiting 3 hours in a county ER while he burned up with fever, 1 paycheck away from homelessness? The accuracy of it stung worse than any slap. I kept him safe, she whispered. That's more than you could have done. You kept him hidden. There's a difference. Is there? Because the first night you find out about him, people are shooting at us. How is that safe, Victor? How is any of this better than what I gave him? Victor turned away, his hands curling into fists at his sides. You should have told me. So you could what? Put him in a bulletproof room? Surround him with armed guards? Teach him that normal means checking under cars for bombs? So I could protect him. The words exploded out of Victor with enough force to rattle the windows. So I could make sure nothing touched him. So I could give him everything instead of watching him suffer because you were too proud to ask for help. This isn't about pride. Then what is it about, Elena? Punishment? Revenge? Did you hate me so much that you'd rather struggle alone than let me be a father? I was terrified. Her own voice broke. I was 23 years old, pregnant, and married to a man whose enemies sent him death threats as wedding gifts. Do you remember our honeymoon, Victor? Because I do. I remember the bomb they found in our hotel room. I remember you killing 3 men in front of me because they tried to take me as leverage. I remember learning that loving you meant painting a target on my back. I would have died before letting anything happen to you. That's exactly what I was afraid of. Elena was crying openly now. Don't you understand? I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I loved you too much to watch you die, protecting us. I left because every time you walked out that door, I didn't know if you'd come back. And I couldn't bring a child into that fear. Victor's shoulders fell slightly. So you chose to raise him alone, in poverty, without protection, without resources. I chose to raise him in peace. No guards, no enemies, just quiet. How'd that work out? The question hung between them like a knife. Elena wiped her eyes. We were fine until tonight. Were you, or were you one emergency away from disaster? He moved closer. I can see it in your clothes, Elena. In the way you look at that hospital bill you can't pay. In the fact that you were ready to wait in that ER for hours while our son stopped breathing because you didn't have insurance. Money isn't everything. No, but it's something. And so is safety. And so is having a father who would burn the world down before letting harm reach you. That's exactly the problem. You can't burn the world down and raise a child at the same time. Then I'll do both. The certainty in his voice stopped her cold. Victor stepped closer, and this time when he spoke, his voice had returned to that controlled, absolute calm that was somehow more terrifying than his anger. You took 5 years from me, Elena. 5 years of watching my son grow. 5 years of teaching him to walk, to talk, to be brave. 5 years of being a father. You took that, and nothing you say will give it back. He paused. But I'm taking the future, starting now. You and Noah aren't leaving this estate until I'm satisfied that every threat is eliminated, and then we're going to figure out what happens next. You can't just keep us here. I can. I will. Try to leave and see what happens. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Elena's last shred of defiance crumbled. How long? As long as it takes. Victor, he's my son. Simple words. Absolute conviction. And you're my wife. I don't care that you ran. I don't care that you lied. I don't care about anything except the fact that I just found out I have a child. And people tried to kill him tonight. So you're going to stay in this house where I can protect you both. And you're going to let me make up for 5 years of missing his life. And what about what I want? Victor looked at her for a long moment. What do you want, Elena? The question was genuine. That somehow made it worse. I want Noah to get better, she said quietly. I want him safe. She stopped. What? I want to believe this can work. That you can change. That your world isn't just violence and fear. She met his eyes. But I've been here before, Victor. I've watched you try to balance this life with being human, and the life always wins. Then watch me prove you wrong. And if you can't, his jaw tightened, then at least I'll know I tried. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating his face in stark white relief. In that moment, Elena saw something she hadn't expected: vulnerability, fear. A man who'd just discovered he was a father and had no idea what to do with that knowledge except hold on tight and refuse to let go. Okay, she whispered. Okay, we'll stay. For now. Until Noah recovers. And then? And then we'll see. It wasn't acceptance. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was enough. Victor nodded once. You should go to him. He'll probably wake up soon and he'll want you. Elena moved toward the door, then stopped. Victor? Those men who attacked the hospital. Will there be more? Yes. The honesty was almost worse than a lie. Can you stop them? I can end them. That's not the same thing. It's the best I can offer. Elena looked back at him, this man she'd loved and feared and fled from. This stranger who was her husband. This killer who was her son's father. Then end them quickly, she said quietly. Because if anything happens to Noah while we're here, if your world touches him one more time, I'll find a way to disappear again. And this time, you'll never find us. She left before he could respond. Back in the medical suite, Noah was stirring. His fever had dropped another degree. The color was slowly returning to his face. Elena sat beside his bed and took his small hand in hers. Mama? His voice was hoarse but stronger. I'm here, baby. Where are we? Elena hesitated. Somewhere safe. Who was that man? The one who carried me? The question she'd been dreading for 5 years had finally arrived. Just someone who's going to help us for a while. Noah's eyes drifted closed again. He looked like me. Elena's heart stopped. What? His face looked like mine. Noah yawned, already slipping back toward sleep. Does that mean he's my daddy? The word hit Elena like a physical blow. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Mama? Go to sleep, sweetheart. We'll talk when you feel better. Okay? Within seconds, he was out again. Elena sat in the darkness and listened to her son breathe and knew that everything had changed. Victor knew the truth now. And soon, Noah would too. The careful life she'd built was collapsing. The walls she'd erected were crumbling. The future she'd imagined, quiet, safe, simple, was burning down around her. And somewhere in this house, Victor Russo was planning his next move in a game she'd tried so hard to escape. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, another kind of storm was just beginning. Noah's fever broke on the third day. Elena had barely left his side during those 72 hours, sleeping in the chair beside his bed, waking at every sound, every shift in his breathing. The medical team cycled through in 8-hour shifts, monitoring vitals, adjusting medications, speaking in calm voices that did nothing to ease the knot of terror in her chest. Victor came and went like a shadow. Sometimes Elena would doze off and wake to find him standing at the foot of Noah's bed, watching his son sleep with an expression she couldn't read. Other times she'd hear his voice in the hallway, low, controlled, issuing orders that always ended with someone saying, "Yes, sir," in tones that suggested failure wasn't an option. They didn't speak. There was too much between them now. 5 years of lies and truth, fear and fury, all compressed into a silence that felt like pressure before an explosion. But when Noah's temperature finally dropped to normal and stayed there, when his breathing smoothed out and the color returned fully to his face, Elena allowed herself to believe they might survive this. She was washing her face in the suite's bathroom when she heard Noah's voice, stronger than it had been in days. "Where's my mama?" Elena rushed out to find him sitting up in bed, looking small and confused but blessedly alert. She crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled him into her arms, breathing in the scent of him, fever-free, alive, hers. "I'm right here, baby. Right here. I don't feel hot anymore." I know, you're getting better. Noah pulled back to look at her face. Are we still at the safe place? Before Elena could answer, the door opened. Victor stepped inside, and Elena felt her son's entire body tense with attention. Victor stopped just inside the threshold, his usual confidence wavering for the first time since she'd known him. He looked at Noah the way someone might look at something precious behind glass, wanting to touch, but afraid of breaking it. You're awake, Victor said quietly. Noah nodded, his fingers gripping Elena's sleeve. Are you the man from the hospital? Yes. You carried me. I did. Silence stretched between them. Elena could feel Noah's heart beating faster against her side, could sense the questions building in him, questions she wasn't ready to answer. Victor seemed to sense it too. He moved carefully into the room, his movements controlled, non-threatening. How are you feeling? Better. Mama says I was really sick. You were, but the doctors here helped you. Noah's eyes tracked around the room, taking in the equipment, the space, the luxury of it all. This doesn't look like a hospital. It's not. It's my home. Your mother and I know each other, so when you needed help, I brought you here where you'd be safe. The explanation was careful, neutral. Elena appreciated the restraint even as she resented the need for it. Oh. Noah processed this with the careful logic of a 4-year-old. Do you have kids? Victor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I do now. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Elena's grip on Noah tightened. Noah, sweetie, are you hungry? She asked quickly. We could ask for some food. I want to talk to him. Noah's attention remained fixed on Victor with uncomfortable intensity. You said we'd talk when I felt better. Elena's stomach dropped. Baby, I don't think... You look like me, Noah continued, his voice growing more certain. I told Mama, your face looks like mine. Victor's expression shifted, something raw and unguarded passing across his features before he could lock it down. Does it? Yeah, we have the same nose and the same... Noah pointed at his own chin. This part. Noah, Elena started. Are you my daddy? The question detonated in the space between them. Elena stopped breathing. Victor went absolutely still, and for 3 endless seconds, nobody moved. Then Victor crossed the room in 4 strides and dropped to one knee beside Noah's bed, putting himself at eye level with his son. His hands were shaking. Elena could see it now that he was close. She'd never seen Victor Russo's hand shake before. Yes, he said simply. I am. Noah looked at Elena. Mama? She couldn't lie. Not with Victor right there. Not with the truth already spoken. Not with her son's wide, trusting eyes searching her face for confirmation. Yes, she whispered. He's your father. Noah absorbed this information with the seriousness of someone much older. Did you know? Yes, baby, I knew. Well, why didn't you tell me? It was the most devastating question Elena had ever been asked. How could she explain fear to someone who'd never had to live with it? How could she justify 5 years of silence to a child who only understood presence and absence, truth and lies? Because it's complicated, she managed, and I wanted to keep you safe. Safe from what? From... Elena's voice broke. From things you shouldn't have to worry about. Victor's attention hadn't moved from Noah's face. Your mother thought my life was too dangerous for you. She was trying to protect you. From you? Noah asked with brutal innocence. From people who might want to hurt me by hurting you. Noah considered this with 4-year-old pragmatism. Like the people at the hospital who made the loud noises? Exactly like them. Did you stop them? Yes. Are there more? Victor's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. There are always more, but I'm very good at stopping them. Noah nodded like this made perfect sense. Then, with absolutely no warning, he reached out and touched Victor's face, small fingers tracing the line of his jaw, the same stubborn chin they shared. You're really my daddy? Victor's voice came out rough. I'm really your daddy. Okay. Noah withdrew his hand and settled back against his pillows. Can I have pancakes? The abrupt shift in topic would have been funny under different circumstances. Elena felt like laughing and crying at the same time. Only a child could accept a world-altering revelation and immediately move on to breakfast. Victor stood, composure somewhat restored. I'll have the kitchen make you anything you want. With chocolate chips? With as many chocolate chips as you want. Noah smiled, the first real smile Elena had seen from him in days. Cool. Victor moved toward the door, then paused. He looked back at Elena, and the weight in his gaze made her chest tighten. Can I talk to you? He asked quietly. Outside? Elena kissed Noah's forehead. I'll be right back, okay? The doctor's here if you need anything. Okay, Mama. She followed Victor into the hallway, her legs unsteady. He led her to a small sitting area at the end of the wing, far enough from Noah's room that they couldn't be overheard. The moment they were alone, Victor's careful control cracked. He knew, Victor said, his voice low and tight. He looked at me and knew. A 4-year-old child figured it out in 30 seconds. Victor, 5 years, Elena. 5 years I could have known him, could have been there when he learned to walk, when he said his first word, when he stopped, running a hand through his hair. What else did I miss? The question wasn't accusatory. It was grief. Elena's throat burned. Everything. You missed everything. Tell me. Victor, I don't think, please. The word came out broken. Just tell me something. Anything. I need to know who my son is. Elena sank into one of the chairs, exhaustion and emotion finally overwhelming her. He loves dinosaurs, especially the ones with long necks. He can name 15 different species. Victor sat across from her, leaning forward with absolute focus. He's stubborn, Elena continued. When he decides he wants something, he doesn't give up. He'll ask 100 different ways until you either say yes or explain exactly why the answer is no. She smiled despite herself. He gets that from you. What else? He's kind, almost too kind. He cries when other kids cry. He shares his snacks even when he's still hungry. He wants to help everyone. Her voice softened. He gets that from you too. The you I fell in love with. Victor's expression shifted. That person is still in there somewhere. I saw it when you carried him out of the hospital, when you brought doctors in the middle of the night, when you looked at him just now like he was the only thing in the world that mattered. Elena met his eyes. That's the man I married, the one who protected people instead of just controlling them. And the other parts? The violence? The empire built on fear? Those are there too. I'm not pretending they're not. Victor stood and moved to the window. Dawn was breaking outside, painting the grounds in shades of gold and amber. I can't change what I am, Elena. This life, it's not something I can walk away from. I'm not asking you to walk away. I'm asking you to choose. Every day. Choose to be the man Noah deserves instead of just the king everyone fears. And if I can't be both, then you'll lose him. Elena stood as well. Not because I'll run again. I won't. I can see that's not an option anymore. But because he'll figure it out on his own. Kids always do. They see who you are when you think they're not watching. And if what he sees is just violence and power and fear, he'll stop seeing you as a father and start seeing you as a threat. Victor turned to face her. Is that what happened to you? You stopped seeing me as your husband and started seeing me as the enemy? I started seeing you as a casualty. Every time you left, I thought it might be the last time. Every phone call in the middle of the night, every emergency meeting, every time your men showed up with blood on their hands, I was watching you die in slow motion, and I couldn't bring a child into that. So you chose poverty over partnership. I chose peace over fear. There's a difference. Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor shifted. Shoulders straightening, expression hardening. The father disappeared. The crime boss returned. I have to handle something, he said quietly. Stay with Noah. Don't leave this wing. I'll have breakfast sent up. Victor, what's happening? Nothing you need to worry about. That's not an answer. He looked at her for a long moment. There are people who saw an opportunity when I was distracted at the hospital. They're learning that was a mistake. I need to make sure the lesson is clear. Meaning what? Meaning I'm going to remind them why moving against me is suicide. He moved toward the door. Keep Noah away from the windows. And if anyone except my personal guards tries to enter this wing, you hit the panic button by the bed. Terror spiked through her. Victor, I'll be back before lunch. Then he was gone, and Elena was left standing in the hallway with the weight of 5 years crashing down on her shoulders. She returned to Noah's room to find him eating pancakes that had indeed been loaded with chocolate chips. A young woman in medical scrubs sat nearby, monitoring his vitals with calm efficiency. "Mama, look!" Noah pointed at his plate with chocolate-smeared fingers. "There's like 1,000,000 chocolate chips." Elena forced a smile. "I see that, baby. Don't eat too fast or you'll get a tummy ache." She spent the morning with him, playing simple games, reading books that had been brought from somewhere in the massive house, answering his questions about Victor with careful honesty. Yes, Victor lived here. Yes, it was a very big house. Yes, there were a lot of people who worked for him. No, they probably wouldn't stay here forever. She hoped that last one was true. Around noon, Elena heard commotion in the hallway, raised voices, the sound of multiple people moving quickly. She moved to the door and found two of Victor's guards in tense conversation. Confirmation on all 3 locations. Clean sweep, no survivors. And the message? Delivered exactly as specified. Bodies displayed where his competitors would find them. The wording was very clear about what happens to anyone who moves during family time. Elena's stomach turned. She stepped back into the room before they noticed her, closing the door quietly. Family time. Victor was killing people to protect what he now considered his family. The thought should have horrified her. Part of it did. But another part, the part that had watched men try to kill her son 3 days ago, felt something darker. Relief. Safety. The terrible comfort of knowing that the monster was on their side. Victor returned just after 1 o'clock. Elena heard him before she saw him, the shift in the guard's posture, the way voices dropped when he entered the wing. When he appeared in Noah's doorway, there was blood on his cuff. Just a small spot, barely visible against the dark fabric. But Elena saw it. Noah didn't. He was too busy showing Victor the tower he'd built from blocks someone had provided. "Look, it's taller than me!" Victor crossed to the bed, his movements careful despite whatever he'd just done. "That's impressive. You must be a very good builder. Mama says I'm good at lots of things." "I'm sure you are." Victor glanced at Elena. "Can I talk to your mother for a minute? Are you going to talk about grown-up stuff?" "Probably." Noah wrinkled his nose. "That's boring." "Usually is." Victor's mouth curved slightly. "I'll be back soon. Don't knock over your tower while I'm gone." "I won't!" Elena followed Victor back into the hallway. He led her further this time, to an actual office with a door that closed and walls thick enough to muffle sound. The moment the door shut, his shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly. "It's handled," he said quietly. "What's handled?" "The people who attacked the hospital, the ones who gave the order, the ones who thought my distraction was an opportunity." He moved to a cabinet and poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey. "They won't make that mistake again." "Because they're dead." "Because they're examples." Elena wrapped her arms around herself. "How many?" "Does it matter?" "Yes." Victor downed the whiskey in 1 swallow. 15. The 3 who pulled triggers at the hospital. The 5 who planned it. The 7 who funded it thinking they could move into territory I'd supposedly abandoned. 15 people, in 1 morning. I didn't do it alone. I have people for that. He poured another drink but didn't touch it. But I was there. I wanted them to know who was ending them and why. "And the message you sent? Family time?" Victor's eyes met hers. "I wanted it clear, absolutely clear, that my wife and son are untouchable, that anyone who even thinks about moving against them will wish they'd never been born." He paused. It needed to be brutal. It needed to be personal. It needed to be something my enemies would remember every time they even considered Elena and Noah's names. "So you made yourself the monster." "I've always been the monster, Elena. I just usually have better reason to pretend I'm not." She moved closer to him, studying his face in the afternoon light. "Do you regret it? What you did today?" "No." "Not even a little?" "They tried to kill our son. The only thing I regret is that I couldn't make it last longer." The honesty was brutal. But Elena had asked for honesty, and Victor had never been good at softening truth. "This is what I was afraid of," she said quietly. "This is why I ran. Because you can't separate the man from the monster. They're the same person. Then you married a monster." "I married a man who protected people. who used his power to help instead of just destroy, who... She stopped, frustrated. You used to be more than this. I used to have less to lose. The words hit her hard, because she understood them. Because 5 years ago, when she disappeared, Victor had been building something brutal, but at least strategically sound. Now he was a father. And fathers didn't think strategically when their children were threatened. They thought in terms of absolute annihilation. What happens now? Elena asked. You've sent your message? You've eliminated the threat. Do we just stay here forever? Until I'm certain it's safe. Yes. Define safe. When every person in my world knows that touching you or Noah means death. When the message has spread far enough that even thinking about you becomes suicide. When... He stopped. When I can sleep at night without wondering if someone's going to try again. That might never happen. Then you might never leave. Elena's temper flared. You can't just keep us prisoner? I'm not keeping you prisoner. I'm keeping you alive. By locking us in a gilded cage? By giving Noah something you couldn't. Complete protection. Unlimited resources. A father who would burn every bridge and break every rule to make sure nothing touches him. And what about what he needs emotionally? What about normalcy, friends, school, a life that isn't defined by guards and guns and fear? Victor's expression hardened. He can have all of that. Here, I'll bring teachers, other children, whatever he needs. But he's not going back to that apartment where you could barely afford heat. He's not going to county hospitals where you wait 3 hours for basic care. He's not going to grow up one emergency away from disaster. He was happy. He was poor. There's a difference. He was safe. He was vulnerable. And you were one mistake away from losing him because you were too proud to ask for help. The accusation stung because it was partially true. Elena had struggled, had made choices based on limited options and dwindling resources, had laid awake at night wondering what would happen if she got sick, if she lost her job, if Noah needed something she couldn't provide. But he'd been hers. Completely, wholly hers. Now he belonged to Victor too, and she didn't know how to share him with a man who thought love and control were the same thing. I need air, she said abruptly. I need to walk. The grounds are secure. I'll have someone escort you. I don't want an escort. I want to be alone. Victor's jaw tightened. That's not an option. Then I'll stay in my room. Just give me space, please. She didn't wait for permission. She left the office and returned to Noah's room where her son had fallen asleep surrounded by blocks and books and comfort he'd never known before. Elena sat beside his bed and watched him sleep and tried to figure out how to protect her child from the father who loved him. Evening came with the soft, insistent quality of endings. The medical staff completed their final checks and declared Noah healthy enough to move to more comfortable quarters. Victor appeared as if summoned, which he probably had been, and helped carry their few belongings to a suite in the main wing. The rooms were absurdly luxurious. A bedroom for Noah, with a bed shaped like a race car, and shelves already stocked with toys. A connecting room for Elena with a view of gardens she remembered from another lifetime. A sitting area between them with furniture that probably cost more than her yearly rent. Noah was delighted. He ran from room to room, examining everything with wide eyes and endless questions. Where did this come from? Could he really keep it? Was this actually his? Victor answered every question with patience Elena hadn't known he possessed. Yes, it was his. Yes, he could keep it. Yes, this was really his room now. Watching them together created a strange ache in Elena's chest. Pride and fear, hope and dread. The sight of her son's hand in his father's, small and trusting, made her want to cry for reasons she couldn't fully name. After Noah had explored everything twice, Victor ordered dinner brought up. They ate together at a small table, the three of them. Like a family. Like the family they could have been 5 years ago if Elena hadn't been so afraid. Noah talked non-stop through the meal, his energy fully returned. He told Victor about his favorite dinosaurs, about the park near their old apartment, about the neighbor's cat who sometimes visited. He asked Victor questions too. Did he like dinosaurs? Did he have a cat? Could they get a cat? Victor answered each one seriously, like Noah's opinions mattered. Like this small boy's preferences were worth his complete attention. and Elena watched and wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. After dinner, Noah started yawning despite his excitement. Elena ran him a bath and helped him into pajamas that had appeared from somewhere, and when she tucked him into the race car bed, he looked up at her with sleepy contentment. "Mama?" "Yes, baby?" "I like it here." Her heart cracked. "Do you?" "Yeah, there's so much stuff, and the food is really good, and—" He yawned. "And my daddy's nice." "He is," Elena managed. "Are we going to stay?" "For a little while." "Good." Noah's eyes drifted closed. "I want to stay." Within minutes, he was asleep. Elena sat on the edge of his bed, running her fingers through his dark hair, and felt the future reshaping itself around her, whether she wanted it to or not. A soft knock at the connecting door made her look up. Victor stood in the doorway, watching them with an expression she couldn't read. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. Elena kissed Noah's forehead and followed Victor into the sitting area. They stood on opposite sides of the space, the distance between them feeling both too much and not enough. "I spoke with my security team," Victor said. "The threat level has dropped significantly. Word is spreading about what happened to the people who moved against us. For now, we're as safe as we're likely to get. For now." "For now," he agreed. "But Elena, I need you to understand something. This life, my life, it's never going to be completely safe. There will always be people who see opportunity in attacking me, who think they can gain power by taking what's mine. We're not yours. You're my family. That makes you more mine than anything else I have." He moved closer. "I can't promise you peace. I can't promise you quiet. But I can promise you protection, resources, everything you and Noah need to live without fear. Except freedom. You're free to leave." The statement shocked her. "What?" "If you want to go, I won't stop you. I'll set you up somewhere safe, provide security from a distance. Make sure you have everything you need." His voice roughened. "But Noah stays." And there it was, the real choice. "You can't separate us," Elena said. "I'm not separating you. I'm giving you options. Stay, and we figure this out together. Leave, and he stays here with me. He's 4 years old. He needs his mother. He needs both parents, and I've already missed 5 years. I'm not missing any more." Elena's hands curled into fists. "So I'm trapped either way." "You're choosing. There's a difference." Victor's gaze held hers. "I know you're afraid. I know this isn't the life you wanted. But I'm asking you to try. Give me 6 months. Let me prove I can be the father he deserves. Let me show you that this can work. And if it doesn't, then we renegotiate. But you have to actually try, Elena. You can't just wait for me to fail." She wanted to refuse, wanted to grab Noah and run again. But she looked at the doorway to her son's room, at the space where he slept peacefully for the first time in months, and knew she was out of moves. "6 months," she said quietly, "but the first time your world puts him in danger, the first time someone threatens him because of who you are, we're done." "Agreed." "And you make changes, real changes. You can't just eliminate threats with violence. You have to actually reduce the number of people who want you dead." Victor's mouth curved slightly. "That's a tall order." "Then you better start working on it." They stood in the silence that followed. Two people who'd loved each other once, trying to figure out if they could do it again under impossible circumstances. "I am sorry," Victor said finally, "for whatever I did that made you so afraid you had to disappear, for not seeing it sooner, for not being someone you could trust with our son." The apology landed like a stone in still water, creating ripples Elena felt in her chest. "I'm sorry too," she whispered, "for taking him from you, for lying about the miscarriage, for 5 years of silence. Can we move forward from here? I don't know, but we can try." It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't trust, but it was something. Victor nodded once and moved toward the door. Then he paused, looking back at her with an expression that reminded her of the man she'd married 7 years ago. "He really does look like me," Victor said quietly. "I keep catching glimpses of myself in him. The way he tilts his head when he's thinking, the stubborn set of his jaw when he wants something. I know. I've been seeing it for years. It must have been hard, seeing me and him every day while trying to forget I existed." Elena's throat tightened. "I never forgot you existed, Victor. I just tried to remember the good parts and forget the rest. Were there enough good parts to remember? There were enough to make leaving the hardest thing I've ever done. Something shifted in his expression, grief and hope, and something too complex to name. Then maybe there's enough to build something new. Maybe. He left, closing the door quietly behind him, and Elena sank onto the couch, feeling like she'd survived something she couldn't quite name. In the next room, Noah slept peacefully, unaware that his entire world had changed. And somewhere in this house, his father was probably already making plans, building strategies, preparing for the next threat. Because that's what Victor Russo did. He planned, he controlled, he eliminated obstacles and protected what was his. Elena just had to hope that somewhere in all that calculation there was room for the man she'd once loved. The man who might still exist beneath the monster. The man who'd looked at their son tonight like he'd discovered something worth dying for. She curled up on the couch and closed her eyes and prayed she hadn't just made a mistake that would cost them all everything. Outside, night settled over the estate like a promise or a threat. Inside, a family was being built from broken pieces and desperate hope, and time would tell if love was enough to hold it together. The first week passed in a strange blur of normalcy that felt anything but normal. Noah adapted with the resilience of childhood, accepting his new reality with an ease that both comforted and terrified Elena. He explored the estate like it was a kingdom built just for him, discovering rooms filled with books, a game room with every toy imaginable, gardens with fountains, and hidden paths. Victor had staff members who appeared whenever Noah wanted something, disappeared when he didn't, and treated the small boy like visiting royalty. Elena watched it all with growing unease. This wasn't real life. This was a carefully constructed fantasy designed to make prison feel like paradise. But Noah didn't see bars. He saw possibility. "Mama, look!" He ran toward her across the south lawn, his small legs pumping with excitement. Behind him, two discreet guards maintained distance while monitoring every angle. "There's a treehouse. Can I go up?" Elena glanced at the structure built into an ancient oak. It looked sturdy, professionally constructed, probably safer than half the playgrounds in the city. "Stay where I can see you, okay?" "Okay!" He scrambled up the ladder with fearless energy. Elena settled on a nearby bench, pulling her jacket tighter against the autumn chill. The estate was beautiful in a way that felt manufactured. Every tree perfectly placed, every flower bed precisely maintained. Even the fallen leaves seemed to arrange themselves artistically across the paths. It was the kind of beauty that required an army to maintain, the kind that reminded you money could buy almost anything. Almost. "He's happy." Elena didn't turn at Victor's voice. "Marchon." She'd learned to sense his approach over the past week, the way the guard's posture shifted, the quality of the air changing with his presence. "He's 4, she said. "Everything's an adventure when you're 4. Victor sat beside her, leaving careful space between them. He'd been doing that all week, maintaining distance, giving her room to breathe. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like strategy. "The treehouse was built yesterday," Victor said. "I had the team work overnight, wanted it ready when he woke up. You don't have to buy his affection." "I'm not buying it. I'm providing it." He paused. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "I missed his first 4 birthdays, Elena. Every Christmas, every milestone, every moment. I can't get those back, but I can make sure the future is different." Elena watched Noah peer out from the treehouse, waving at them with chocolate-smeared hands. Someone had given him cookies. Someone always gave him cookies now. "You're spoiling him," she said quietly. "I'm loving him. I'm just doing it in the only way I know how. With things. With extravagance. With excess. With everything I have." Victor's voice roughened. "Because what else can I give him, Elena? I can't give him a normal childhood. I can't give him anonymity. I can't give him the simple life you wanted for him. So I give him this. Safety, comfort, everything he could possibly want. Except boundaries. Except the understanding that he can't have everything. Except the character that comes from occasionally hearing no." Victor was quiet for a long moment. "You think I'm ruining him. I think you're loving him the way you love everything else, by consuming it, by surrounding it with so much protection and provision that it can't breathe." Would you prefer I ignore him? Keep my distance? I'd prefer you find balance. I don't know how to do that. The admission was startlingly honest. Elena turned to look at him, really look at him, and saw exhaustion beneath the polished exterior. Victor looked like a man trying to learn a new language with no dictionary and no teacher. Then learn, she said softly. Because Noah doesn't need a king, he needs a father. Before Victor could respond, Noah called out from the treehouse. Daddy, come up, you can see everything from here. The word hit them both. Daddy. Noah had been using it more frequently, testing it out, making it his. Each time he said it, Elena watched something shift in Victor's expression. Wonder and grief and determination all tangled together. Victor stood and crossed to the tree. He climbed the ladder with surprising grace for a man in an expensive suit, and within moments, Elena could hear their voices drifting down. Noah's excited chatter. Victor's deeper responses. The sound of genuine laughter. It should have made her happy. Instead, it made her afraid. Because she could see it happening. The slow, inevitable pull of Victor's gravity. Noah was falling in love with his father, with this life, with everything Elena had spent 5 years protecting him from, and she didn't know how to stop it without destroying them both. That evening, Elena found Victor in his study. She'd avoided this room all week, knowing what it represented. The nerve center of his empire, the place where decisions were made that ruined lives and ended futures. But they needed to talk, really talk, and putting it off wouldn't make it easier. She knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. Victor looked up from his desk, surprise flickering across his face. Elena, we need to discuss Noah's education. He set down the papers he'd been reviewing. He's 4. Isn't it early for school? He'll be 5 in 6 months. He should be in pre-K now, socializing with other children, learning structure. I've already arranged for tutors, the best early childhood educators money can buy. They start next week. Private tutors aren't the same as a classroom. He needs peers, friends his own age. Victor's expression hardened slightly. He needs security. Public schools are too vulnerable. Too many access points, too many variables I can't control. So he grows up isolated, the only child in a mansion full of adults? I'm having other children brought in, carefully vetted from trusted families. He'll have playmates. Elena crossed her arms. Carefully vetted. You mean children of your associates. Kids who'll grow up knowing exactly who their parents work for. Kids who'll understand his world. This isn't his world, Victor. Or it doesn't have to be. He could have a normal life if you'd let him. There is no normal life for my son. Victor stood, moving around the desk to face her. The moment I acknowledged him, the moment word spread that Victor Russo has an heir, Noah became a target. Every enemy I have, every competitor looking for leverage, every person who wants to hurt me, they all know about him now. Normal isn't an option anymore. Because you made it impossible. Because the world is what it is. He paused. I won't apologize for protecting him, for doing whatever it takes to keep him safe. Even if it means keeping him locked away? If necessary, yes. Elena's frustration boiled over. You're building him a beautiful cage and calling it love. Can't you see that? What I see is a child who's thriving, who's healthy and happy and has everything he needs. Except freedom. Except choice. Except the ability to make mistakes and learn from them without a security detail watching his every move. Victor's jaw tightened. He's 4 years old, Elena. He doesn't need freedom. He needs parents who keep him alive. He needs parents who let him live. There's a difference. They stared at each other across the study, the same argument circling like it had been all week. Different words, same core conflict. Victor couldn't separate protection from control. Elena couldn't accept that Noah's childhood had to be defined by his father's choices. 6 months, Victor said finally. That was our agreement. Give me 6 months to prove this can work. It's been 1 week and you've already turned him into a prince in a tower. I've given him safety, stability, a father who's actually present. The barb hit its mark. Elena flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? You kept him from me for 5 years. Now I'm here. I'm trying, and you're telling me I'm doing it wrong. So tell me, Elena, what's the right way to be a father to a son I just met? What's the perfect balance between keeping him safe and letting him be normal when his existence makes him a target? Elena didn't have an answer, because he was right, in a terrible way. The moment Victor knew about Noah, everything changed. There was no going back to the anonymous life they'd had, no returning to county hospitals and small apartments in peaceful obscurity. I don't know, she admitted quietly, but this isn't it either. Victor returned to his desk, his shoulders carrying weight she couldn't see. I'm doing the best I can. I know. Then what do you want from me? Elena moved closer, close enough to see the genuine exhaustion in his face. I want you to remember that he's a child, not an asset to be protected. I want you to let him get dirty and take small risks and occasionally fall down without a team of people catching him. I want you to raise a boy, not a successor. And if I can't separate the two, then we're going to have a problem. Before Victor could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted, the father disappearing, the crime boss emerging. I have to take this, he said. Elena recognized a dismissal when she heard one. She turned to leave, but Victor's voice stopped her. Elena? I am trying, even if it doesn't look the way you want it to. She nodded without turning around and left him to his empire. The second week brought unexpected complications. Noah woke up crying in the middle of the night, his small body shaking with sobs that came from somewhere deeper than nightmares. Elena rushed to his room, gathering him into her arms, feeling his tears soak through her shirt. Baby, what's wrong? I want to go home, he sobbed. I want our apartment. I want things to be like before. Elena's heart cracked. I know, sweetheart, I know. Everything's different now. Everything's big and scary, and there's too many people, and his words dissolved into crying. She held him and rocked him and whispered comfort she didn't fully believe. Because going back wasn't an option. Their apartment was gone, given up when she couldn't make rent. Their old life was over. And this new one was still too sharp and unfamiliar to feel like home. A soft knock at the door made her look up. Victor stood in the doorway, dressed in sleep pants and nothing else, his hair disheveled. He must have heard Noah crying. What happened? Victor asked quietly. He's overwhelmed. Everything's changing too fast. Victor moved into the room slowly, carefully, like approaching something wild. Noah, can I come in? Noah lifted his tear-stained face from Elena's shoulder. I want my old room. I know this is hard, Victor said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Everything's new and different and probably scary sometimes. It's too big. I don't like it. What if we made it smaller, just for you? We could move furniture around, make it cozier. I want my old stuff, my old toys, my old bed. Victor looked at Elena, something questioning in his expression. She nodded slightly. They couldn't recreate the past, but they could honor it. Tell me about your old room, Victor said gently. What did it look like? Noah sniffled, his crying slowing. It was little, and Mama put stars on the ceiling that glowed in the dark. And I had a shelf for my dinosaurs, and his voice wobbled. And it smelled like home. What does home smell like? Like Mama's cooking, and the soap she uses, and sometimes the candles she lights when she's happy. Victor glanced at Elena again, and she saw something shift in his face. Understanding. Maybe even regret. What if we brought some of those things here? Victor suggested. Not to replace your old room, but to make this one feel more like yours. Can we? We can do anything you want. Noah wiped his nose on his pajama sleeve. Can Mama sleep in here tonight? Like she used to when I was scared? Of course she can. Elena climbed into the race car bed, and Noah immediately curled against her side. Victor stood, preparing to leave them alone, but Noah's small voice stopped him. Daddy? Can you stay too? Victor froze. Elena saw the war in his expression, wanting to stay, uncertain if he should, afraid of doing the wrong thing. If your mom says it's okay, Victor said carefully. Elena met his eyes across the dim room. They were strangers trying to parent together, enemies learning to coexist, two people who'd loved each other once trying to figure out if they could do it again. It's okay, she said softly. Victor settled into the chair beside the bed, and they stayed like that until Noah fell asleep between them. His small body relaxed, his breathing evening out, his fingers still clutching Elena's shirt even in sleep. I didn't think about what he lost, Victor said quietly. I was so focused on what I could give him that I forgot to ask what he needed. Welcome to parenting, Elena replied. We're all making it up as we go. You're better at it than I am. I've had more practice, and I've made plenty of mistakes. Victor was quiet for a long moment. Tell me about the apartment, about his old life. I need to understand what he's missing. So Elena told him about the tiny one-bedroom where Noah slept in an alcove she'd converted with curtains and creativity, about cooking meals that stretched across 3 days, teaching Noah that leftovers were an adventure, not a compromise, about the park 2 blocks away where they'd spend entire Saturdays because it was free and Noah loved the swings, about the neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who sometimes watched Noah when Elena had to work late, who brought them soup when they were sick, who became family because they needed one. Victor listened without interrupting, his expression growing more complex with each detail. Elena wasn't trying to make him feel guilty. She was just answering his question, but she watched understanding dawn in his eyes. The realization that poverty and love weren't mutually exclusive, that his son had been happy despite having nothing because he'd had everything that mattered. I would have given you all of that, Victor said when she finished. The security without the isolation, the resources without the loss. If you just told me, I couldn't risk it. Not then. And now? Elena looked down at their sleeping son. Now I don't have a choice. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. Victor stood, moving toward the door, but he paused at the threshold, looking back at them. I meant what I said earlier. We'll bring pieces of his old life here, make this feel less like a cage and more like a home. Thank you. And Elena, I'm sorry for not seeing what this transition would cost him, for thinking I could replace everything you built with things instead of understanding. The apology settled between them like a truce. Victor left, and Elena held her son and wondered if they were all going to survive this. The next morning, Victor disappeared for several hours. When he returned, he brought Noah to the garage, where a team was unloading items from a truck. Elena followed, curious and concerned in equal measure. I went to your old apartment, Victor explained. The landlord let me in. I brought everything that looked important. Elena watched as workers carried in boxes. Noah's clothes, his toys, the plastic storage bin full of dinosaurs, the small bookshelf Elena had painted herself, even the string lights shaped like stars that he'd loved. Noah's face lit up with recognition and relief. My stuff! Mama, look, it's my stuff! He ran to the boxes, pulling out treasures Elena had thought were lost forever. His favorite blanket, worn thin from washing. The stuffed triceratops he'd slept with since he was a baby. Books they'd read together 100 times. Can we put it in my room? Noah asked eagerly. That's the plan, Victor said. You can arrange it however you want. Make your room feel like yours. They spent the afternoon transforming the space. The expensive toys were moved aside to make room for the familiar ones. The race car bed was decorated with Noah's own blankets and pillows. The dinosaurs claimed their shelf. The stars went up on the ceiling. By evening, the room looked like a strange hybrid. Luxury and poverty side by side. New and old. Victor's world and Elena's world trying to coexist in one small space. It shouldn't have worked, but somehow it did. Noah fell asleep that night, surrounded by familiar comfort, and for the first time since arriving at the estate, he didn't cry. Elena found Victor in the garden later that night. He was sitting on a stone bench, looking out over grounds that were probably worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. Thank you, she said, sitting beside him, for today, for getting his things. I should have thought of it sooner. You're learning. That's what matters. Victor turned to look at her. Is it? Learning? Or am I just stumbling through this hoping I don't destroy everything? That's called parenting. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. You make it look easier. I've had 5 years of practice, and I've still made mistakes. Like hiding him from me. Elena flinched. Are we doing this again? No, Victor stopped, choosing his words carefully. I'm trying to understand. Not judge. Not punish. Just understand why you thought he'd be better off without me. Elena pulled her jacket tighter against the evening chill. You want the truth? Always. I was terrified you'd turn him into you, that he'd grow up thinking power was the answer to everything, that violence was how you solve problems, that people were assets to be controlled or threats to be eliminated. She paused. I didn't want him to become the kind of man who loves with his fists and trusts with conditions. Victor absorbed this with visible effort. Is that what I am to you? A man who loves with violence? You're a man who doesn't know any other way, who builds walls instead of bridges, who protects by eliminating rather than understanding. She met his eyes, and I was afraid that if you raised him, he'd learn that was normal. And now? You've seen me with him this week? Am I everything you feared? Elena considered the question honestly. No. You're better than I expected, but you're also exactly what I was afraid of. You can't separate who you are from what you do. And I don't know if that's something that can change. I'm trying to change. Are you, or are you just trying to prove me wrong? The question hung between them like a challenge. Victor stood, agitation breaking through his usual control. What do you want from me, Elena? I've brought you here, given you everything, protected you. I'm learning to be a father to a son I didn't know existed. I'm trying to balance my world with his needs. What more can I do? Change your world, not just how you navigate it, but what it is entirely. You're asking me to dismantle an empire. I'm asking you to choose every day. Choose to be the man Noah needs instead of the king everyone fears. And if I can't be both, then eventually you'll have to decide which one matters more. Victor stared at her, something breaking in his expression. He already matters more. He matters more than everything. That's what terrifies me. The admission was raw, unguarded. Elena saw the truth of it in his face. This wasn't strategy. This was fear. Then show him, she said softly. Not with things. Not with protection. Show him by changing. By choosing differently. By proving that loving him is more important than controlling everything. I don't know if I know how. Then learn. Because if you don't, you'll lose him. Maybe not now, maybe not for years. But eventually he'll see what you are, and he'll have to choose whether to accept it or reject it. And if you haven't changed by then, if you're still the man who answers everything with power and violence, he'll reject it. He'll reject you. Victor's hands curled into fists. Is that what you did? Rejected me? I rejected the life. I never stopped. Elena stopped herself. Never stopped what? She couldn't say it. Couldn't admit that part of her still loved him, even after everything. That running had been about fear, not hate. That if he'd been different, if his world had been different, she never would have left. Never stopped hoping you'd change, she finished quietly. Victor moved closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he carried. And if I do change? If I prove I can be different? What then? Then maybe we have a chance, all three of us. A chance at what? At being a family, a real one. Not just people living in the same house because circumstances forced us together. Something shifted in Victor's expression, hope and fear and desperation all tangled together. I want that, more than I've wanted anything. Then prove it. Not with words, not with promises, with action, with change, with choosing Noah over everything else, every single day. Victor nodded slowly. How much time do I have? You have 6 months. That was our deal. But Victor? She stood facing him directly. If you can't change in 6 months, you probably can't change at all. And I'll leave. I'll take Noah, and I'll find a way to disappear again, even if it means spending the rest of my life running. I won't let you take him. Then give me a reason to stay. Elena left him standing in the garden and returned to the house, her heart pounding with the weight of what she'd just said. She'd drawn a line, set a deadline, demanded the impossible, and now she had to wait and see if the man she'd loved could become the man their son needed. In his room, Noah slept peacefully, surrounded by stars and dinosaurs and the careful blend of two worlds trying to become one. And in the garden, Victor Russo stood alone in the darkness, staring at a future that depended entirely on his ability to do something he'd never done before. Change. The next 3 weeks brought small shifts that felt like earthquakes. Victor started spending mornings with Noah, not commanding time or scheduling appointments, but actually being present. They built elaborate block towers, read stories, played games that had no strategy and no winners. Elena watched from a distance, seeing Victor struggle with concepts that came naturally to children but felt foreign to him. Patience, silliness, joy without purpose. But he tried, and slowly, incrementally, he improved. He also started changing other things. Elena noticed the reduction in armed guards around the estate. They were still there, still watchful, but less visible, less intimidating. Victor was learning to create security without making them feel like prisoners. He brought in other children, not heirs to criminal enterprises, but carefully vetted kids from normal families. Employees' children. Kids who didn't know or care who Victor Russo was. They came to play with Noah, to run through the gardens, to be loud and messy and wonderfully, beautifully ordinary. Noah thrived with the company. His earlier sadness faded as he made friends, learned to share, discovered that his world could be bigger than just parents and guards. Elena watched it all with cautious hope, but she also watched Victor disappear into his study with increasing frequency. Watched him take calls that made his expression harden. Watched him return from meetings with blood on his knuckles he thought she didn't see. He was trying to change, but his world was fighting back. It came to a head 3 weeks after their conversation in the garden. Elena woke to find Victor's side of the bed empty. They'd fallen into an uneasy routine of sleeping in the same suite, maintaining separate rooms but gravitating toward each other in the dark hours. It wasn't romance, it was comfort, the fragile beginning of something that might become trust. But this morning, he was gone. And the house felt different, tense, waiting. She found Noah eating breakfast with his usual enthusiasm, unaware of any tension. The nanny smiled and assured her everything was fine. But Elena felt it in the air. Something was wrong. She found Victor in his study, standing at the window with his phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what he's offering," Victor said coldly. "The answer is no. And if he asks again, I won't be this polite." He ended the call and saw Elena in the doorway. "How bad is it?" she asked. Victor's expression was carefully neutral. "Nothing you need to worry about." "That's not an answer." He set down his phone. "Marcus Caldwell made an offer to buy out my legitimate holdings. When I refused, he suggested that having a family made me vulnerable, that maybe I should reconsider before something unfortunate happened." Elena's blood ran cold. "He threatened Noah?" "He implied. There's a difference." "Not to me there isn't." Victor crossed to her, his movements controlled despite the fury she could see barely contained beneath the surface. "He won't touch you. He won't touch Noah. I've made that very clear." "How clear?" "Clear enough that he's reconsidering his career choices." "Victor, you can't just, I can. I did. And I'll do it again every time someone even thinks about using my family as leverage." His voice dropped lower. "You wanted me to protect Noah. This is what protection looks like. I wanted you to change your world, not just defend us from it. I'm trying, but the world doesn't change overnight." Elena moved closer, studying his face. "What did you do?" "Nothing he didn't deserve." "That's not an answer." Victor's jaw tightened. "I made it clear that threatening my son was a terminal mistake. That anyone who even considered it would find out exactly how creative I can be with consequences." "Did you kill him?" "No, but I made him wish I had." Elena's stomach turned. This was it. This was the moment she'd been dreading. Victor reverting to type, answering threats with violence, proving that change was impossible. "You promised," she said quietly. "You promised you'd change." "I am changing, but I won't apologize for protecting what's mine. We're not yours to protect like assets. We're your family." "Exactly, which makes protecting you more important than anything else." "Even if it means becoming the monster I was afraid of?" The words hit him visibly. Victor stepped back, his expression shuddering. "Is that what you see? A monster?" "I see a man who defaults to violence because he doesn't know any other language. Who thinks fear and respect are the same thing. Who can't imagine solving problems without destroying people." "Then what should I have done? Let him threaten our son? Waited to see if he'd actually follow through before acting?" "You should have found another way. Used law enforcement. Used leverage that didn't involve blood and terror. Use literally anything except the exact thing I've been begging you not to be. Victor's control finally cracked. There is no other way. You think the law protects people like us? You think I can call the police and they'll care that some crime boss threatened my illegitimate son? They'd laugh while they wrote the report. Then get out. Leave this life. Build something legitimate that doesn't require you to terrorize people to keep us safe. You think I can just walk away? This isn't a job, Elena. It's who I am. It's the world I was born into, the empire I built, the power that keeps us alive. Then Noah and I leave, because I won't raise him in a world where every threat is answered with violence, where his father solves problems by making people wish they were dead. Victor stared at her, breathing hard, fury and fear warring in his expression. You can't leave. Watch me. Elena, no. I gave you 3 weeks. I watched you try. I saw the progress. But the first real threat, the first real challenge, and you defaulted to exactly what you've always been. You didn't change. You just learned to hide it better. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Elena's voice broke. I've been here a month watching you play father while still being king, watching you build block towers in the morning and destroy lives in the afternoon, watching you promise change while your world stays exactly the same. And I'm tired, Victor. I'm so tired of hoping you'll be different when everything proves you can't. I love him. The words came out raw. I love our son more than my own life. Doesn't that count for something? It counts for everything. But love isn't enough. Not when the way you love puts him in danger. Not when protecting him means becoming the exact thing I'm trying to protect him from. Victor's hands curled into fists at his sides. Then what do you want? Tell me what I need to do, and I'll do it. I want you to choose, really choose. Not just say the words, but make the sacrifice. Give up the empire. Walk away from the violence. Build something new that doesn't require you to be a monster. And if I can't, then we're done. The finality of it echoed in the study like a gunshot. Victor stared at her, and Elena saw something break in his expression. Fear. Real, genuine fear. Not of enemies or threats, but of losing the family he'd just found. How long? He asked quietly. What? How long do I have to make the choice? Elena's throat tightened. The original agreement was 6 months. It's been a month. You have 5 left. And if I haven't changed by then? Then Noah and I leave, and you'll have to decide if you're going to let us go or become the man who keeps his family prisoner. Victor nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. 5 months. I can work with that. Victor, I'll change. I'll find a way, because losing you again, losing him, his voice caught. I can't. I won't. So I'll figure it out. He walked past her, out of the study, leaving Elena standing alone with the weight of an ultimatum that might destroy them all. She returned to Noah's room and found him playing with his dinosaurs, creating elaborate worlds where the gentle ones protected the small ones from the dangerous ones. Mama, why are you sad? Elena knelt beside him, pulling him into a hug. I'm not sad, baby, just thinking. About what? About how much I love you, and how I'd do anything to keep you safe. Noah hugged her back with his whole small body. I know. You always keep me safe. If only that were true, if only love and good intentions were enough to protect against a world that didn't play by normal rules. If only Victor could really change. Elena held her son and prayed for miracles she wasn't sure existed. And somewhere in this massive house, Victor Russo was making plans to do something impossible, change everything, or lose everyone. The change began quietly. So quietly, Elena almost missed it. Victor stopped taking certain calls. She noticed it first during breakfast when his phone rang with a tone she'd learned meant business. He glanced at the screen, watched Noah demonstrate how his cereal turned the milk purple, and sent the call to voicemail. That was important, Elena said after Noah ran off to brush his teeth. Not as important as this. Victor gestured at the breakfast table, at the space his son had just occupied. I'm learning priorities. One ignored call isn't change, Victor. No, but it's a start. Over the next week, Elena watched him systematically dismantle pieces of his empire. Not obviously, not dramatically. But she saw the signs, meetings that ended earlier, associates who were turned away at the gate, long conversations in his study that ended with phrases like, "Find someone else," and "I'm out." She found him one evening staring at financial documents spread across his desk, his expression carved from exhaustion. "What are you doing?" she asked from the doorway. Victor looked up, and for a moment she saw past the control to the man underneath. Burning bridges, severing ties, figuring out how to walk away from 20 years of building an empire. Elena stepped into the room. "Is it working?" "Define working. I've divested from 8 illegal operations in the last 5 days, transferred ownership of 3 territories, declined 4 contracts that would have been worth millions." He ran a hand through his hair. "My associates think I'm either dying or losing my mind." "Which is it?" "Neither. I'm choosing differently." He met her eyes. "Like you asked." "And the violence, the threats, the people who won't let you just walk away?" Victor's expression hardened slightly. "I'm handling it." "How? Do you really want to know, or do you want to be able to say honestly that you didn't?" The question hung between them. Elena knew what he was asking. Did she want the sanitized version or the truth? Did she want to pretend his hands were clean or acknowledge they never would be? "I want to know you're trying," she said finally. "I want to believe this is real. It's real. But Elena, you need to understand something." Victor stood, moving around the desk toward her. "I can't just flip a switch and become someone else. These people, these connections, this world, it doesn't come with a resignation letter. Walking away means burning it all down, and fire doesn't discriminate. People will get hurt. People who deserve it? Mostly. Some? I don't know." His honesty was brutal. "I'm trying to minimize casualties, but the kind of change you're asking for, it comes with a body count." Elena's stomach turned. "Then maybe I'm asking for the impossible." "Maybe you are, but I'm going to try anyway." He stopped in front of her, close enough to touch but carefully not touching. "Because the alternative is losing you both, and that's not acceptable. Even if trying destroys you, even then." The certainty in his voice should have comforted her. Instead, it terrified her, because she could see the cost already. Victor looked thinner, harder, like he was being ground down by forces pulling in opposite directions. "You can't sacrifice yourself to save us," she said quietly. "Watch me." Before she could respond, Noah's voice called from the hallway, "Daddy! Mama! Come see what I built!" They found him in the game room, surrounded by an elaborate city constructed from every building block in the house, towers and bridges and roads that sprawled across the entire floor. "It's amazing, baby," Elena said, kneeling beside him. "It's a city where everyone is safe," Noah explained with the serious logic of a 4-year-old. "See? The tall buildings protect the small ones, and there's walls but also doors so people can visit. And this part," he pointed to a section with careful pride, "this is where the families live, together, like us." Victor stood at the edge of Noah's creation, staring down at it with an expression Elena couldn't read. "It's perfect." "Do you think we could live there?" Noah asked. "In the safe city?" "I think we're building it right now," Victor said quietly. "Just a different version." Noah smiled and returned to his construction, narrating stories about the people who lived in his city, the adventures they had, the way everyone took care of each other. Elena watched Victor watch their son and saw something shift in his face. Not control, not strategy, just pure unguarded love for this small boy who believed safety and family could coexist. "He's right, you know," Victor said, still looking at Noah. "About the city, about protection and openness, about keeping people safe without locking them away. Can you build that? Really? I don't know, but I'm going to try." The trying became visible in ways Elena hadn't expected. Victor started meeting with lawyers, legitimate ones, the kind who specialized in corporate restructuring and tax law, not the kind who made charges disappear. She'd hear him on the phone discussing shell corporations and asset transfers, speaking a language that sounded almost normal. He brought in financial advisors who looked at his holdings with expressions that ranged from impressed to horrified, depending on which particular enterprise they were evaluating. "You've built something massive," she overheard one advisor say, "but half of it exists in legal gray areas that could collapse at any moment. If you want to go legitimate, we need to separate clean from dirty and burn the dirty before it contaminates everything else." Then burn it, Victor said simply. Save what can be saved, destroy the rest. Elena found herself included in conversations she'd never expected. Victor asked her opinion on business decisions, on which charities to support, on how to structure things so Noah would inherit wealth without inheriting the empire that created it. I don't know anything about this, she protested during one particularly complex discussion about real estate holdings. You know what matters, Victor replied. You know what kind of world we want to build for him. That's more important than any financial strategy. Slowly, incrementally, Elena started to believe it might be possible, that Victor might actually transform, that the empire built on fear and violence could become something else. Then Marcus Caldwell's body was found in the river. Elena learned about it from the news, not from Victor. The report was clinical, detached. Prominent businessman discovered deceased, evidence of foul play, police investigating. No suspects named. She found Victor in the garden, standing in the exact spot where she'd demanded he change. He didn't turn when she approached, but his shoulders tensed like he'd been expecting her. Tell me you didn't do this, Elena said. I can't. The admission hit her like a physical blow. Victor, he came after Noah. Victor's voice was flat, emotionless. Not implied, not suggested. He sent men to watch the estate, to track his routines, to identify vulnerabilities. He was planning something, Elena, something specific. So you killed him. I eliminated a threat to our son. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Elena's voice rose despite her attempt to control it. You promised you'd change. You've been changing. And then the first real test. This wasn't a test. This was an active threat against a 4-year-old child. Victor finally turned to face her, and she saw something frightening in his expression. Not anger, not guilt, just cold, absolute certainty. You want me to choose Noah over everything? I did. Caldwell was planning to take him, to use him as leverage, and I made sure that will never happen. You don't know that he was actually going to... I know exactly what he was going to do. I've been doing this long enough to read intentions, and his intentions were clear. Victor stepped closer. So yes, I killed him, and I'd do it again. I'd kill anyone who threatens our son. Is that the answer you wanted? Elena felt tears burning in her eyes. I wanted you to be different. I am different. The old me would have killed him for the insult. The new me waited until he became a genuine threat. That's growth, Elena. It might not be the growth you wanted, but it's what I can manage. It's not enough. Then nothing will ever be enough. Victor's voice turned rough. Because I can change everything else. I can walk away from the empire. I can build legitimate businesses and donate to charity and become a model citizen. But I will never, never allow someone to hurt my son. And if that means occasionally becoming the monster you're afraid of, then that's a price I'm willing to pay. And what about Noah? What happens when he's old enough to understand what you do? When he learns his father solves problems by killing people? Then I'll deal with it, but he'll be alive to have that conversation. They stared at each other across a divide that felt impossible to bridge. Elena wanted to scream, to rage, to grab Noah and run, but she also understood, in a terrible way, the logic driving Victor's actions. If someone had been planning to take Noah, to hurt him, to use him, could she honestly say she wouldn't have done the same? The thought horrified her. I need time, she said quietly. I need to think. How much time? I don't know. Victor nodded slowly. Take what you need. But Elena, while you're thinking, remember that Caldwell is dead and Noah is safe. And ask yourself which one matters more. He walked past her back toward the house, leaving Elena alone in the garden with questions that had no good answers. She found Noah in his room that evening, playing with his dinosaurs. He looked up when she entered, his face brightening with uncomplicated joy. Mama, want to play? I'm making the T-Rex protect the baby dinosaurs from the mean ones. Elena sat beside him, pulling him into her lap. Baby, can I ask you something? Okay. Are you happy here? With Daddy and me? In this house? Noah considered the question with surprising seriousness. Sometimes. I like having Daddy and all my stuff and the treehouse and my friends who come to play. But sometimes I miss how it was before. when it was just you and me, and things were smaller. He looked up at her with eyes that were far too perceptive. Are you happy, Mama? The question stole her breath. I don't know, sweetheart. Is it because of Daddy? It's because everything is complicated. What does complicated mean? It means there aren't easy answers. It means sometimes you love people, but you're also afraid of them. It means wanting two different things at the same time and not knowing which one to choose. Noah processed this with the careful attention he gave to important things. Do you love Daddy? Elena's throat tightened. I did once. Very much. Do you still? I think so. But I'm also scared of him sometimes. Of the things he does. The choices he makes. Is Daddy bad? No, baby. He's not bad. He's just... How did you explain moral complexity to a 4-year-old? He's someone who does bad things for good reasons, and that makes it hard to know what's right. Noah nodded like this made perfect sense. Like when the T-Rex eats the mean dinosaur to protect the babies, it's bad but also good. Exactly like that. Then maybe Daddy's like the T-Rex, scary but protecting us. Elena pulled Noah closer, breathing in the scent of him, feeling his small heart beat against hers. When did you get so wise? I'm 4.5. That's basically grown up. She laughed despite everything. You're right, basically ancient. They played dinosaurs until Noah started yawning. Elena tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and whispered all the promises mothers make. I love you. You're safe. Everything will be okay. She just hoped at least some of them were true. She found Victor in his study much later, surrounded by documents and looking like he'd aged a decade in a single day. We need to talk, Elena said. Victor looked up, wariness in his expression. I'm listening. Elena closed the door and sat across from him. I've been thinking about what you said, about Caldwell, about choosing Noah over everything. And you were right. If someone was planning to hurt him, to take him, I would have done the same thing. Maybe not the same way, but the same result. She paused. That terrifies me. The realization that I'm capable of that motherhood turned me into someone who could justify murder. Victor's expression softened slightly. It's not murder when you're protecting your child. It's survival. That's a rationalization. Maybe, but it's also true. Elena leaned forward, needing him to understand. But Victor, this can't be the pattern. Every threat can't be answered with death. Eventually, Noah will notice. He'll see. And what do we tell him then? We tell him the truth, that the world is dangerous and sometimes doing the right thing looks ugly. Or we change the world around him so those choices aren't necessary. I'm trying. You've seen me trying. I have. And it's not enough. Not because you're not making progress, but because your world keeps pulling you back. Every step forward comes with 2 steps sideways. You divest from illegal operations, but someone threatens Noah, and you revert to type. Victor's jaw tightened. What do you want from me? Total pacifism? Perfect morality? I'm doing my best to navigate impossible circumstances. I want you to finish what you started. Don't just walk away from pieces of your empire. Burn it all, completely. Leave nothing that could drag you back. That will take time. Then take it. You have 4 months left. Use them. Become someone new entirely, or admit you can't, and let us go. Victor stood, agitation breaking through his control. You're asking me to commit suicide. You understand that, right? The kind of exit you're describing, it doesn't end clean. People will come after me. They'll see it as weakness, as opportunity. Then make it clear you're not weak. Make it clear you're choosing something more important than power. And when they come anyway? When they test whether I'm really out or just posturing, what then? Then you prove you've changed by handling it differently. Without murder. Without violence. Without becoming the thing I'm afraid of. Victor stared at her like she'd asked him to fly. You're describing an impossibility. Then maybe this whole thing is impossible. Maybe we should stop pretending and make clean breaks now before Noah gets more attached. No. The word came out hard, final. I'm not giving up. I'm not letting you go. I'll figure it out. I'll find a way. How? I don't know yet, but I will. He moved around the desk, standing before her with desperate intensity. Give me the 4 months. Let me finish this. Let me prove I can become someone different. Elena stood as well, meeting his eyes. And if you can't? Then I'll let you go. Freely. Completely. I'll set you up somewhere safe, provide everything you need, and I'll visit Noah on whatever terms you set. I'll be the father who chose wrong, but at least had the decency to admit it. The promise settled between them like a contract written in hope and fear. 4 months, Elena agreed quietly. But Victor? No more bodies. No more threats eliminated with violence. You find another way, or you prove you haven't really changed at all. That's a dangerous promise to make. Then don't make it, but know that the first time you default to killing, I'm gone. No second chances. No explanations. Just done. Victor absorbed this with visible struggle. Then, slowly, he nodded. Okay, no more bodies. I'll find other solutions. You promise? I promise. They stood in the study, two people trying to build a future from impossible materials, and Elena prayed she hadn't just demanded something that would destroy them all. The weeks that followed were the strangest of Elena's life. Victor threw himself into transformation with the same intensity he'd once applied to building his empire. She watched him systematically burn every bridge, sever every connection, transfer every asset. Lawyers became permanent fixtures. Financial advisors looked perpetually stressed. Associates who'd once feared Victor now looked at him with confusion bordering on concern. You're really doing this, his second-in-command said during a meeting Elena accidentally overheard. Walking away from everything. Not everything, Victor replied. Just the parts that don't matter anymore. And when they come for you, when someone decides you're vulnerable, then I'll handle it without becoming what I was. That's suicide. No, it's evolution. The threats came, just as Victor predicted. Not all at once, but in a steady stream. Territory disputes, demands for explanation, attempts to pull him back in through obligation or fear. Victor refused each one, sometimes through lawyers, sometimes through carefully worded statements that made his position clear, sometimes through sheer stubborn repetition of the same answer. I'm out. Find someone else. This life is over. Elena watched him navigate it all with a combination of pride and terror. He was trying, really trying, but she could see the cost. Victor lost weight, slept less, looked more worn down with each passing day. You're killing yourself, she said one night, finding him in his study at 3 a.m. I'm building something new. It just happens to require demolishing the old foundation first. At this rate, you won't survive to see the new building. Victor looked up at her with exhausted eyes. Would you rather I stop? Go back to what I was? No. I'd rather you take care of yourself while you transform. I'm fine. You're not. You're running on fumes and stubbornness. Oh, Victor leaned back in his chair. What do you want me to do, Elena? I have 4 months to dismantle 2 decades of empire building. 4 months to become someone new. 4 months to prove I can be the father Noah deserves and the man you might love again. That doesn't leave much time for sleep. I never said I stopped loving you. The admission escaped before Elena could stop it. Victor froze, staring at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. What? Elena moved into the room, suddenly committed to honesty. I never stopped loving you. That was never the problem. The problem was loving you and being terrified of you at the same time. Loving you and knowing your world would destroy anything soft. Loving you and having to choose between that love and keeping Noah safe. And now? Now I'm watching you try to change, and it's the hardest thing I've ever witnessed. And I don't know if love is enough to make this work, but I know I want it to be. Victor stood slowly, crossing the space between them. He stopped just short of touching her, his hands hovering like he was afraid she'd disappear if he made contact. Can I? He asked quietly. Elena nodded. He pulled her into his arms, and she felt the tremor in his hands, the rapid beat of his heart, the desperation in the way he held her, like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to this new life he was trying to build. I'm scared, Victor admitted against her hair. I'm terrified I'll fail, that I'll revert, that something will happen to Noah and I'll forget every promise and become exactly what you're afraid of. Then we'll be scared together. And if I do fail, if I can't change enough, Elena pulled back to look at him. Then at least you tried. At least Noah will know his father loved him enough to attempt the impossible. That's not enough. It might have to be. They stood in the study holding each other while the city slept beyond the windows, two people trying to become something new while their old selves fought every step. But they were trying. Together. And maybe that counted for something. The crisis came with 2 months left on their deadline. Elena woke to shouting in the hallway. She bolted from bed, her first thought for Noah, and ran toward his room. Victor was already there, standing in the doorway, blocking her view of whatever was happening inside. "What's wrong?" Elena demanded. Victor turned, and his expression made her blood freeze. Someone sent Noah a gift. The guards caught it before he opened it. What kind of gift? The kind designed to make a point. Elena pushed past him into the room. Noah was sitting on his bed, looking confused and a little frightened. A wrapped box sat on his dresser, surrounded by guards wearing expressions that suggested whatever was inside wasn't good. "Baby, are you okay?" Elena crossed to Noah, checking him over despite knowing he was fine. "I'm okay, Mama. They won't let me open my present." "That's because it's not a present, sweetheart. It's—" She looked at Victor. "What is it?" "A message," Victor said tightly. "From someone who thinks I've gone soft." One of the guards cleared his throat. "Sir, we should move the family to the secure wing while we sweep the entire estate. If they got this past perimeter security—" "They didn't get it past security. Someone on the inside helped them." Victor's voice was cold, controlled, lethal. "Find out who, and when you do, bring them to me alive." Elena's stomach turned. This was it. The moment Victor would revert. The moment he'd prove change was impossible. "Noah, baby, why don't you go with James to the kitchen?" Elena suggested, gesturing to one of the friendlier guards. "I bet he can find you those cookies you like." Noah looked between his parents, sensing the adult tension. "Are you mad at each other?" "No, sweetheart. We just need to talk about grown-up things." "Boring things?" "Very boring things." Noah allowed himself to be led away. The moment he was gone, Elena turned on Victor. "Don't," she said simply. "Don't what?" "Don't revert. Don't become the man who tortures information out of people. Don't prove that everything you've been trying to build was just temporary performance." Victor's expression was carved from stone. "Someone threatened our son. Again. Inside my own home, using my own people. You expect me to handle that with conversation? I expect you to handle it without becoming a murderer. You promised, Victor, no more bodies." That was before someone infiltrated my security to put a bomb in my son's bedroom. It's a bomb? It's a statement. Inactive, designed to make a point rather than actually detonate. But the message is clear. They can reach him, they can hurt him, and they're doing it to prove I'm vulnerable. Elena felt terror and fury warring in her chest. Then prove you're not. Prove you're stronger as someone new than you ever were as what you used to be. How exactly do I do that when someone on my payroll just tried to kill my son? By finding out who, why, and turning them over to actual authorities. By handling this legally instead of with violence. By showing whoever sent this that you're not who you used to be. Victor laughed, harsh and bitter. You think the authorities will care? You think the police will protect us from people who operate outside the law? Then hire private security, ex-military. People who specialize in protection without being criminals. Build something new that doesn't require you to torture answers out of traitors. That will take time we don't have. Then make the time. Because the alternative is proving that nothing changed, that you're still the man who solves everything with fear and death. And if that's true, Victor, we're done. Not in 2 months. Now. They stared at each other while guards pretended not to hear the ultimatum being delivered. Victor's jaw worked. His hands curled into fists. Elena could see him at war with himself, every instinct demanding he revert to type, every promise forcing him to choose differently. "Fine," he said finally, the word torn from somewhere deep. "We do it your way. We find the traitor. We question them legally. We turn over whatever information we get to authorities who probably won't do anything useful with it. And the person who sent the message? I handle them through channels, legitimate ones, even if it takes longer and works less effectively. You promise?" "I promise." "But Elena?" His voice dropped. If this goes wrong, if Noah gets hurt because I chose mercy over efficiency, I will never forgive myself. Or you. The threat hung between them like smoke. He won't get hurt, Elena said with more confidence than she felt. Because we're going to do this right. Together. Victor nodded tightly and turned to his head of security. Lock down the estate. No one in or out until we identify who brought that package inside. Review all security footage from the last 72 hours. And get me a list of every person who had access to Noah's room. Yes, sir. And when we find them? We question them, legally. Then we turn them over to the FBI. The guard's surprise was visible. Sir? You heard me. We're handling this through proper channels, even if it kills me. It might, the guard muttered, but he left to execute the orders. Elena and Victor stood in Noah's room, staring at the wrapped box that represented everything trying to destroy what they were building. You're asking me to do something I'm not sure I'm capable of, Victor said quietly. I know. And if I fail, if I can't control the instinct to revert, then you prove I was right to be afraid. And we end this before Noah gets hurt worse than a scare. Victor looked at her with something like despair. How did I get here? How did I become the man who has to choose between protecting his son and keeping his promises? By being human, by loving people, by trying to be better than what you were. Elena moved closer. The old you wouldn't have hesitated. He would have torn this place apart looking for answers and left bodies in his wake. The fact that you're struggling, that's proof you're changing. Struggling isn't success. No, but it's progress. They stood together in their son's room, surrounded by evidence that the past was still hunting them, and tried to believe that change was possible. Tried to believe that love and choice could be stronger than instinct and history. Tried to believe they had a future worth fighting for. The next 48 hours tested every promise Victor had made. They found the traitor, a guard who'd been bribed with enough money to betray basic loyalty. Victor interrogated him in the presence of lawyers and recorded everything. He didn't touch the man, didn't threaten, just asked questions with cold, controlled precision until the guard confessed everything. The package had come from someone Victor used to know, someone who thought Victor's exit was weakness, someone who wanted to make a point about the cost of going soft. Victor turned over every piece of evidence to the FBI, filed official complaints, did everything by the book despite every instinct screaming at him to handle it his way. Elena watched him white-knuckle his way through proper channels and felt something shift in her chest. He was doing it, actually doing it, choosing differently despite the cost. The FBI took the case, promised action, made no guarantees, and Victor let them. Didn't interfere. Didn't take matters into his own hands. He just protected his family and waited for justice to work through proper channels. It was the bravest thing Elena had ever seen him do. 2 days after the package incident, she found him in the garden where they'd had so many important conversations. You did it, she said simply. Victor looked up from the bench where he'd been sitting. Did what? Changed. Really changed. You had every reason to revert, every justification to become what you were. And you didn't. You chose differently. It almost killed me. Every minute of those interrogations, I wanted to make him hurt. Wanted to make everyone involved hurt. And I didn't. I know, I saw. Elena sat beside him. I'm proud of you. Something broke in Victor's expression. I've done terrible things to earn a lot of reactions, but proud? That's new. Get used to it, because I'm watching you become someone new, and it's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Victor pulled her close, and they sat in the garden while evening settled around them, two people building a future one impossible choice at a time. 2 months left, Victor said quietly. Think I can finish this transformation by then? I think you already have. The rest is just paperwork. And us? Think we can figure out what we are by then? Elena turned to look at him. I think we're already figuring it out. What are we? 2 people who love each other. 2 people trying to be better. 2 people raising a son who deserves parents who chose him over everything else. She paused. That's enough for now. And later? Later we'll see. But Victor? For the first time since I showed up in that hospital, I actually believe we have a later worth planning for." He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious he'd finally learned not to break. And in the house behind them, their son slept safely, protected by a father who'd learned that real strength wasn't violence. It was choice and love and the courage to become someone new. The final 2 months moved faster than Elena expected, marked by small victories and careful rebuilding. Victor's legitimate empire took shape with surprising speed. He'd always been brilliant at business, it turned out. The same strategic mind that had built a criminal network now constructed something clean: real estate developments, technology investments, a consulting firm that specialized in corporate security. Everything legal, everything documented, everything designed to provide without requiring darkness. Elena watched him navigate board meetings and contract negotiations with the same intensity he had once applied to territory disputes. The difference was now people smiled when they saw him coming instead of flinching. "You're good at this," she told him one evening after he'd successfully closed a deal worth 8 figures. Victor looked up from his laptop, surprise flickering across his face. At what? Being legitimate. Building something real that doesn't require fear to maintain. "It's easier than I expected. Turns out most business is just strategy and timing. The illegal part was never necessary, just faster." He paused. "And more dangerous. Do you miss it?" The question hung between them. Elena watched Victor consider it with the honesty she'd come to expect from this new version of him. "Sometimes," he admitted, "I miss the simplicity, the clarity. You had a problem, you solved it. No committees, no legal reviews, no wondering if the right thing would actually work. But I don't miss who I had to be to operate that way. I don't miss the bodies or the threats or the constant vigilance. I don't miss looking at my son and wondering if he'd grow up to fear me." Victor set aside his laptop. "The old life was simpler. This one's better." Elena moved to sit beside him on the couch. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm over the past weeks. Not quite romantic, not quite platonic, something in between that felt like rediscovery. "Noah asked me today if we were going to stay here forever," she said. "What did you tell him?" "That I didn't know, that we were figuring it out." She looked at Victor. "What would you want me to tell him?" "That this is home, that we're a family, that he doesn't have to worry about losing either parent again. Can you promise that? Really promise it?" Victor turned to face her fully. "I can promise I'll never choose the old life over him. I can promise I'll keep building something new. I can promise that every day I'll wake up and make the choice to be his father instead of what I used to be." "And us? You and me? What about us?" Elena's heart hammered. They'd been dancing around this conversation for weeks. "We're living together, raising Noah together, building a life together. But we haven't talked about what that means." "What do you want it to mean?" "I don't know. 6 months ago, I was terrified of you. 3 months ago, I was certain this couldn't work. Now—" She stopped, searching for words. "Now I'm watching you become someone I could love without fear, and I don't know what to do with that." Victor reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand. "I never stopped loving you. Even when you were gone, even when I thought you were dead, even when I was furious about the lies, you were always the one thing I couldn't let go of." That kind of love is dangerous. All real love is dangerous. It makes you vulnerable, makes you soft, makes you choose people over power. His thumb traced circles on her palm. "But it's also the only thing that ever made me want to be better." "And you're sure? Sure you can maintain this? That you won't wake up one day and realize you made a mistake walking away from everything?" "I didn't walk away from everything. I walked away from the parts that were destroying me, the parts that would have destroyed us. What I walked toward? That's worth more than any empire." Elena felt tears building. "I want to believe you." "Then believe me. Or don't. But give me the chance to prove it. Every day. For the rest of our lives." Before she could respond, Noah's voice called from upstairs. "Mama, Daddy, come see." They found him in his room, standing in front of a painting he'd made in his art class. It showed 3 figures, a woman, a man, and a small boy, standing in front of a house. The proportions were wrong, the colors wild, the style pure 4-year-old enthusiasm. "It's our family," Noah announced proudly. "That's you, and that's Daddy, and that's me, and we're all together at home." Elena knelt beside him. "It's beautiful, baby. Are we? All together?" The question was innocent, but the weight behind it was anything but. Noah was asking if his world was stable, if the family he'd just discovered would stay intact, if he had to prepare for more loss. Victor knelt on Noah's other side. "We're together, and we're going to stay together. I promise." "Forever?" "Forever." Noah threw his arms around Victor's neck, and Elena watched her son and his father hold each other with the kind of trust that could only be earned through time and consistency. Victor had earned it. Somehow, impossibly, he'd become someone Noah could trust completely. And watching them, Elena felt the last of her resistance crumble. That night, after Noah was asleep, Elena found Victor in their shared sitting room. He'd taken to spending evenings there, working on his laptop or reading, always available if she wanted company, but never demanding it. "We should talk," Elena said. Victor set aside his work. "Okay." She sat across from him, gathering her courage. "The 6 months is almost up, 2 weeks left on our original deadline." "I know, and I've made a decision." Victor's expression didn't change, but she saw tension enter his shoulders. "I'm listening. I want to stay. Not because I'm trapped, not because I'm afraid, but because I choose this. I choose you. I choose us." Something broke in Victor's control. He closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, they were bright with emotion. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. I've watched you transform yourself. I've seen you choose Noah over everything else. I've witnessed you become the man I always hoped you could be." Elena moved to sit beside him. "I'm not naive. I know there will be hard days. I know the past will try to pull you back sometimes, but I also know you're strong enough to keep choosing forward, and I want to be here while you do it." Victor pulled her close, his arms tight around her. "I won't let you down. You will sometimes. That's human. But I believe you'll keep trying. That's what matters." They sat together while the night settled around them. Two people who'd found each other twice, building something stronger the second time. "There's something I want to do," Victor said quietly. "Something I should have done differently the first time." "What's that?" He pulled back to look at her. "Marry you again. Not because we're already legally married, but because I want to choose you properly this time. No arrangements, no protection deals, no empire politics, just you and me and Noah, making a commitment based on who we actually are now." Elena's breath caught. "Victor, you don't have to answer now. Think about it. But Elena, I want to do this right. I want Noah to see his parents choose each other freely. I want you to know that this isn't obligation or convenience. It's choice. I don't need a ceremony to know you've changed. Maybe not. But I need it. I need to stand in front of people and make promises based on who I am now, not who I was. I need to commit to you and Noah with the understanding that love means sacrifice and choice, and sometimes choosing the hard path because it's the right one." Elena looked at this man who'd transformed himself for love, and felt her heart make the final leap from fear to trust. "Yes," she whispered. "Let's do it right this time." Victor's smile was tentative, hopeful, real. "Yeah?" "Yeah." He kissed her then, soft and deep and full of promise. And for the first time in 6 months, Elena kissed him back without reservation. They planned the ceremony for a month later, small and private, just family and the few friends they'd made in this new life. Nothing like the elaborate production their first wedding had been, when hundreds of guests had attended to witness an alliance more than a marriage. This time, it was just them. Noah was deeply involved in the planning, insisting on wearing a suit that matched his father's and carrying the rings with the seriousness of someone entrusted with crown jewels. "I'm the most important person," he announced during a fitting, "except for you and Daddy." "But almost," Elena laughed. "You're absolutely the most important person, baby." "Will we be a real family after?" "We're already a real family." "But more real?" "Yes, more real." The ceremony took place in the garden where Elena and Victor had so many pivotal conversations. The same garden where she'd demanded he change, where he'd promised to try. where they'd slowly rebuilt trust from broken pieces. Noah stood between them as they exchanged vows Victor had written himself. "I promise to choose you every day," Victor said, his voice steady despite the emotion Elena could see in his eyes. "Not because I'm obligated, not because it's convenient, but because loving you and Noah is the best thing I've ever done. I promise to keep growing, keep changing, keep choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. I promise to be the father Noah deserves and the husband you need. And I promise that every decision I make will be filtered through one question. Is this who I want to be for my family?" Elena's throat was tight, but she managed her own vows. "I promise to trust you, to believe in the change you've made, to stop waiting for you to fail and start celebrating how far you've come. I promise to choose you not out of fear, but out of love, and I promise that no matter how hard it gets, I'll keep choosing us." They exchanged rings, new ones, not the ones from their first wedding. These were simpler, chosen together, symbols of commitment rather than obligation. When they kissed, Noah cheered, and the small gathering of people who loved them applauded. It wasn't the wedding of the century. It wasn't designed to impress anyone or cement alliances. It was just real. And that made it perfect. The next year brought changes both expected and surprising. Victor's legitimate business empire flourished. He had a gift for reading markets, for identifying opportunities, for building something sustainable. The wealth remained, but the source transformed completely. He used some of that wealth to establish a foundation dedicated to helping people escape dangerous situations. Funding for domestic violence shelters. Resources for witness protection. Support for people trying to leave criminal organizations. It was his way of atoning, Elena realized, using what he'd built through darkness to create light for others. Noah started kindergarten at a small private school that valued kindness over achievement. He made friends easily, his natural sweetness attracting other children. He talked about his day with the same enthusiasm he brought to everything, and neither Elena nor Victor took for granted how ordinary and beautiful it all was. "My teacher says I'm good at sharing," Noah announced one evening at dinner. "That's because you are," Elena replied. "She also says I ask good questions. Like, why questions? About how things work." Victor smiled. "Curiosity is a good trait." "What's curiosity?" "Wanting to know things, asking questions, being interested in how the world works." Noah considered this. "Then I have lots of curiosity. I want to know everything." "Then you'll fit right into this family," Victor said. "We're all still learning." It was true. They were all still learning. Victor was learning to be a father without being a king. Elena was learning to trust without waiting for catastrophe. Noah was learning that family was stable, that parents didn't disappear, that love was consistent. They were building something new from pieces that shouldn't have fit together. And somehow, impossibly, it was working. The real test came 18 months after that night in the hospital. Victor received word that someone from his old life wanted a meeting, someone significant, someone who represented the world he'd walked away from. Elena found him in his study, staring at the message with an expression she couldn't read. "Who is it?" she asked. "Dmitry Volkov, one of the most powerful people in my old world. He wants to discuss my exit, says there are loose ends that need addressing." Elena's stomach dropped. "What kind of loose ends?" "The kind that could destroy everything we've built. Or nothing at all. It's impossible to know with Dmitry." Victor looked up at her. "He's requesting a meeting, just the two of us, tomorrow night. And you're going to refuse, right? Tell him you're done, that there's nothing to discuss. If I refuse, he'll keep pushing. He'll find other ways to make his point, other people to use as leverage." Victor stood. "But if I meet with him, I can end this. Make it absolutely clear that I'm out and staying out. Or he'll pull you back in. He can't pull me anywhere I don't want to go, can't he?" Elena moved closer. "Victor, you've come so far. We've come so far. Meeting with him, going back to that world even for a conversation. It's dangerous. Everything's dangerous. The question is whether I run from it or face it. Facing it looks like a trap. Maybe. But I'd rather spring the trap on my terms than wait for it to close on its own." Elena wanted to argue, to forbid it, to demand he refuse. But she'd learned over the past year that Victor didn't respond well to demands. He responded to trust. Okay, she said quietly. Meet with him. But Victor, if he asks you to come back, if he offers you anything that sounds tempting, I won't. I couldn't if I wanted to. Everything I care about is here. Promise me. I promise. The next evening, Victor dressed in one of his expensive suits, armor from his old life, and prepared to face his past one final time. Elena helped him with his tie, her fingers shaking slightly. Where are you meeting him? Neutral ground, a restaurant downtown, public enough to be safe, private enough to talk. You're taking security? 2 people. Discreet. They'll stay outside. And if something goes wrong? Victor cupped her face in his hands. Nothing will go wrong. I'll hear what he has to say, I'll make my position clear, and I'll come home. To you. To Noah. To the life we built. You better. He kissed her, soft and sure. I love you. I love you too. Come home safe. Always. Elena spent the evening trying not to watch the clock. She played with Noah, read him stories, tucked him in with extra kisses. She tried to work, to read, to do anything that would distract from the fear building in her chest. Victor was strong. He'd changed. He wouldn't revert. But what if Dmitri was stronger? What if the pull of the old life was irresistible? What if she'd been naive to think anyone could really walk away from that world? Her phone rang at 9:30. Victor's name on the screen made her heart leap. Hello? It's done, Victor said. I'm on my way home. What happened? I'll tell you when I get there, but Elena, it's really done, all of it. He arrived 30 minutes later, looking exhausted but unburdened. Elena met him at the door, searching his face for signs of what had transpired. Tell me, she said. Victor pulled her to the couch, keeping her hand in his. Dmitri wanted to make sure I understood the cost of leaving. He outlined everything I'd given up, every connection I'd severed, every bridge I'd burned. He told me I was making a mistake, that going legitimate was a death sentence, that eventually someone would come after me when they realized I was vulnerable. And what did you say? I told him I'd rather be vulnerable with something to lose than invincible with nothing worth protecting. I told him about Noah, about you, about building a life that doesn't require me to be a monster. Victor paused. And I told him that if anyone from the old world comes after my family, I won't revert to what I was. I'll destroy them through legal means, with lawyers and law enforcement and the kind of power that comes from operating in the light. How did he react? He laughed, said I'd become soft, that the old Victor would have never made threats through lawyers. And then he said he respected it, that walking away takes more courage than staying ever did, that if I could actually pull it off, I'd be the first person in our world to successfully escape. Victor's grip on her hand tightened. He's not going to interfere. He's going to let me go. Completely. Elena felt tears building. Really? Really? It's over, Elena. The old life, the threats, the constant fear that something would pull me back. It's done. She threw her arms around him, and he held her while she cried with relief and joy and the overwhelming weight of actually believing in their future. We're free, she whispered against his shoulder. We're free, he agreed. The years that followed were almost aggressively normal in the best possible way. Noah grew from a small boy into a curious, kind child who asked endless questions and made friends easily. He played soccer, joined the school science club, and developed a passion for marine biology that led to countless trips to aquariums. He knew his father had come from a complicated past. Victor never lied to him, never pretended he'd always been legitimate. But he also showed Noah every day that people could change, that mistakes didn't define you, that choosing to be better was always possible. Victor's businesses continued to thrive. He became known in legitimate circles as someone with unusual insight into security and risk management. People wondered about his background, but never asked directly. He'd reinvented himself so completely that the old Victor Russo felt like a different person entirely. Elena went back to school, finished her degree, and started working for Victor's foundation. She specialized in helping women escape dangerous relationships, using her own experience to provide insight and compassion. It was hard work, often heartbreaking, but also deeply meaningful. They bought a house in the suburbs, Smaller than the estate, more normal, with neighbors who borrowed sugar and kids who played in the street. The estate was sold, converted into a corporate retreat center that generated income while erasing the ghosts of Victor's past. They had family dinners, school plays, parent-teacher conferences, beach vacations, movie nights, all the mundane, beautiful moments that made up a life. Noah's 5th birthday came and went, then his 6th, his 7th. And one evening, when Noah was 8, he asked the question they'd been waiting for. "Dad, were you a bad guy before?" They were sitting on the back porch, watching the sunset. Elena was inside making dinner. It was just father and son and the truth waiting to be spoken. Victor looked at his boy, this child who'd changed everything, and chose honesty over comfort. "Yes," he said simply. "I was. I hurt people. I broke laws. I built an empire based on fear and violence. I was very good at being bad." Noah processed this with the careful thought he brought to important things. "Why?" "Because I didn't know any better. Because it was what I was taught. Because I thought power was the same as strength and control was the same as safety." "But you're not bad anymore." "I try not to be. Every day I try to choose differently." "Because of me?" "Because of you, and because of your mom, and because I realized that being feared wasn't as important as being loved. That having power didn't matter if I didn't have anyone I cared about to share it with." Noah leaned against Victor's side. "I'm glad you changed." "Me too, buddy. Do you ever miss it, being powerful and scary?" Victor considered lying, then chose truth. "Sometimes. When things are hard or frustrating, sometimes I miss the simplicity. But then I come home to you and your mom, and I remember that this, right here, is better than anything I had before." "Even though we're boring now?" Victor laughed. "Especially because we're boring. Boring is beautiful when you've lived through chaos." Noah nodded like he understood, even though he probably didn't. Not fully, but he would someday. And when that day came, Victor would tell him more, would explain the full scope of what he'd been and how hard it had been to change. For now, this was enough. On Noah's 10th birthday, Elena found Victor in the garage looking at a box he'd kept locked away for years. "What is that?" she asked. "Pieces of my old life. Things I couldn't bring myself to throw away but couldn't keep in the house either." Elena moved closer. "What's in it?" "Reminders, photos of people who are gone, mementos from a life I don't live anymore." He looked at her. "I think it's time to let it go. All of it. Burn it and move on completely." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. That person, the one in these photos, the one who needed these reminders, he doesn't exist anymore. And I don't want Noah to ever find this and think that's who his father is." They burned it together in the backyard fire pit that evening, watching paper and photographs and pieces of Victor's past turn to ash. When it was done, Victor pulled Elena close. "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me a reason to change, for believing I could, for loving me through the transformation. You did the hard part. I just witnessed it." "No, you made it possible. You and Noah. You gave me something worth being better for." They stood together watching the last embers die, and Elena felt the final piece of the past release its hold. They were free. Truly, completely free. The future stretched ahead of them, full of possibility and choice, and the beautiful, ordinary moments that made up a life. Years later, when Noah was graduating high school, Elena stood with Victor watching their son give a speech about second chances and choosing to be better than your circumstances. "He's talking about you," Elena whispered. "He's talking about all of us," Victor replied, "about what we built together." Noah spoke about his parents' foundation, about the people they'd helped escape dangerous situations, about how it was never too late to choose differently. He spoke about his father, who'd walked away from everything to build something better. He spoke about his mother, who'd been brave enough to run and brave enough to stay. And he spoke about himself, about growing up knowing that family was choice and love was action, and that every day was an opportunity to be better than yesterday. When he finished, the auditorium erupted in applause. Elena and Victor stood with everyone else, clapping until their hands hurt, pride overwhelming them both. After the ceremony, Noah found them in the crowd. He was taller than Elena now, starting to look like a young man instead of a boy. "Did I do okay?" he asked. Victor pulled him into a hug. "You did perfect. I meant what I said about you, about how you changed. I know you did. Are you proud of who you became?" Victor looked at his son, this miracle who'd saved him from himself, and felt emotion tighten his throat. "I'm proud that I became someone you're proud of. That's all that matters." Noah hugged them both, and Elena felt the circle complete. The scared woman who'd run into the hospital 5 years ago, the ruthless man who'd been given a second chance, the small boy who'd needed both of them. They'd all grown into something new together. They'd become a family, not through force or obligation or convenience, through choice, through effort, through love that was strong enough to demand change and patient enough to wait for transformation. That evening, back at their house, Elena found Victor in Noah's old room. They'd converted it into a guest room years ago when Noah moved to the larger bedroom down the hall, but some things remained. The shelf of dinosaurs, the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, small pieces of the child who'd changed everything. "Thinking about the past?" Elena asked. Victor turned to her. "Thinking about the future, about Noah going to college, about the foundation expanding, about growing old with you. That's a lot of future. It's a good future, better than anything I imagined back when you first ran." Elena moved to stand beside him. "Do you ever regret it? Walking away from all that power?" "Not for a second. That power was empty. This, you and Noah and the life we built, this is real. Even on the hard days?" "Especially on the hard days, because even our worst day now is better than my best day back then." They stood together in the room where so much had changed, looking at the evidence of a childhood well loved, and felt the weight of gratitude for impossible transformations. "Victor," Elena said quietly. "Yeah? Thank you for changing, for choosing us, for becoming the man Noah needed. Thank you for giving me the chance, for not giving up on me, for loving me enough to demand better." They kissed in the dimming light. Two people who'd found each other twice, built something beautiful from broken pieces, and proved that love really could change everything. Outside, the evening settled into night. The city moved on, indifferent to the small miracle happening in one suburban house. The world kept turning, full of danger and darkness, and all the things they'd fought so hard to escape. But inside that house, there was light. There was love. There was a family built on choice and change, and the radical belief that people could become better than what they were. Victor Russo had been a monster once, a king of violence and fear, a man who thought power was everything. Now he was a father, a husband, a man who'd learned that real strength was choosing the hard right over the easy wrong, who'd discovered that love was more valuable than empire, who'd proven that transformation was possible if you wanted it badly enough. And Elena, who'd run with nothing but hope and a secret, had learned that sometimes you had to leave before you could choose to stay. That fear and love could coexist until love grew strong enough to win, that believing in someone's potential for change was the greatest gift you could give. Together, they'd built something impossible. A family. A future. A life that proved redemption wasn't just a concept. It was a daily choice made over and over, until the new person you were trying to become was simply who you were. Noah fell asleep that night in his room full of books and dreams, safe in the knowledge that his parents loved each other and him, that his world was stable. That family wasn't something you were born into. It was something you built through choice and effort and love. And in their room down the hall, Victor and Elena held each other in the darkness and felt the peace that came from having fought for something and won. Not perfectly, not without cost, but completely. They'd walked through fire and come out changed. They'd lost everything and gained what actually mattered. They'd learned that love without trust was impossible, but trust could be rebuilt brick by brick until it was stronger than it ever was before. And they discovered that the best stories weren't about perfection. They were about transformation, about choosing to be better, about loving someone enough to let them grow, even when growth was painful and slow and uncertain. This was their story. A woman who ran, a man who changed, a child who saved them both. It wasn't the story anyone expected. But it was theirs. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.